All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call our June 22nd meeting to order at 6 o'clock p.m. So please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so first up on the agenda, we have some select board training. So this evening from 6 o'clock to about 7 o'clock, the board will begin with a scheduled training session covering open meeting law, Robert's Rules of Order, and board decorum, civility, and professional meeting conduct. So I'll now turn this over to Lisa Mead of Mead, Tellerman, and Costa to begin our training.
Great, thank you very much for having me here this evening.
If you could just unmute your mic, that would be great. Fabulous, thank you.
There we go. Thank you very much for having me here this evening. So we're going to start with the open meeting law, and all of the decorum and behavior and Robert's rules are going to fall into that discussion. So the open meeting law itself, which is what governs all public bodies in Massachusetts, is General Law, Chapter 38, Section 18 to 25, and the more refined regulations are found at 940 CMR 29. So those are the statutory references. The open meeting law is actually managed and governed by the Division of Open Government and the Attorney General's Office, commonly referred to by town council as the dog officer. And before, I don't know how long you all have been in town government, but there was a major change in the open meeting law in 2010. And prior to that, each separate district attorney in Massachusetts enforced and interpreted the open meeting law themselves. So depending on what county you were in, there may be different rules for how that went. And the legislature and the Attorney General's office found that it was important to try to bring it all under one umbrella and have it interpreted and enforced evenly across the Commonwealth. So that is the genesis of the new open meeting law, not so new anymore. And then, as I said, the dog officer has issued new regulations under 940 Section 29. So what is governed or what falls under the open meeting law? Well, the first is all public bodies. And so what is a public body? It includes all multi-member boards, committees, or commissions established to serve a public purpose in a town. This includes subcommittees created to advise and report to the full body. So just beware. A lot of times it's easier to do business. Let's have send this off to a two-person subcommittee, have them go do the work and report back to the body. That subcommittee still has to comply with the open meeting law. They have to post their meetings, they have to keep minutes, and it has to be in a place that's open to the public. So even if it's a subcommittee, it's still subject to the open meeting law. If you send one person off to do something, to do some research or something like that, that is not a committee. One person does not make a committee. So anytime there is a smaller group appointed by the larger group, it is a subcommittee. And then what about that public body gets regulated? And that is the deliberations of the public body, which includes any written or oral communication, including communication via email or other electronic medium between or among members of the public body on any public business within its jurisdiction. That does not include the distribution of meeting materials, scheduling information, reports, documents that are supposed to be discussed in a meeting. So if Rebecca sends out to everybody, here's the agenda and the packet for tonight, that's all good. If somebody were to reply back all, and everybody was copied on that and says, are you kidding me, Rebecca? I am not going to vote on item 35. I would never vote for that, not as long as I live. Well, that's a deliberation because now you've commented on the matter that's going to be before the board.
Okay.
If the chair sends something to everybody that says, can everybody meet on Thursday? No, we can't meet on Thursday. Can we meet on Friday? That's all fine. You can talk for 10 days on, and sometimes you probably do, on how to schedule a meeting, and that's fine. You're allowed to do that. But anything that's of substance, that's under your purview, you may not deliberate outside of the public body, including in emails or texts.
Mm-hmm.
So other definitions are, important definitions are intentional violation. when people are sworn in to serve on a public body, they're supposed to get a copy of the open meeting law. So the Attorney General's office deems you to know what the open meeting law is. So an intentional violation is anything that was acted with specific intent to violate the law, anything where people acted with deliberate ignorance of the law, or where they acted and they were previously informed it would be a violation of the law. Those are all actions that would be violations, and you're deemed to know what the law is, so you need to be careful of that. I always like to have people ask before they act. It's always important. At the very end, I'm going to tell you that you can actually get advisory opinions in advance from the Attorney General's office. I've done that on a number of occasions because there are some communities that we represent where there is a person who constantly is complaining about the open meeting law. And so when we know something might happen that is going to raise a question and we know it's going to be okay, we'll get an advisory opinion so we can just rely on that. And when the person complains, we can just hand them the advisory opinion. So they're always pretty good about issuing advisory opinions. So what is a meeting? Well, as I said before, it's a meeting of a quorum of the body where you meet to discuss the business. And what the Attorney General's office does is they define things that are not a meeting. So before 2010, if you went to do a site visit, let's say you were on the Conservation Commission or the Zoning Board or Planning Board, and you had to go out and do a site visit. You used to have to post those meetings. It had to be 48 hours in advance. People were allowed to go. You don't have to do that anymore for on-site inspections, so long as you don't deliberate on site. You can go, you can ask questions, and then come back to the full body and report. But you can't deliberate on site. Those do not have to be posted in advance, 48 hours. Attendance by a quorum of a public body at a public or private gathering, including a conference or training program. So if you all went to the MMA annual conference, that's fine, as long as you don't go into a corner and start talking about business, right? If you all had if the school committee had a holiday party, that's fine, they can do that. Those are all exempt. Attendance by a quorum of the public body at a meeting of another public body that has complied with the notice requirements of the open meeting law, so long as the visiting members communicate only by open participation in that meeting. So, this is a tricky one. In fact, I have a next slide. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it. But let me give you an example. So we used to think that, let's say, the Council on Aging had a meeting, and 3 of you attended that meeting. And the Council on Aging posted the meeting, and I would say, yeah, that's okay, you can go to that meeting, that's fine, because there's an exception here that says you can do that. Or if you were meeting with the Finance Committee, let's say the school committee, at the annual Finance Committee meeting, all came to the Finance Committee. I said, that's fine, the Finance Committee's posted that meeting. I mean, the school committee, Finance Committee's posted the meeting. We had a case, it was actually my case, and it involved the Council on Aging, where I had a Council on Aging that was discussing a new Council on Aging building, senior center. And 3 members of a 5-member select board went to the meeting. They did not sit anywhere near each other at the meeting. And during the meeting, the chair asked if there was any comments. And each select board member got up and made a comment about the senior center. Not amongst one another, but a comment to everybody. One member didn't even comment about the senior center, commented about something else. And then they sat down. I was at this meeting. I said, okay, that's okay. So towards the end of the meeting, the vice chair said to the select board members that were there, how would you vote on this if they were in front of you? And I said, stop, don't answer that question. You cannot answer that question. So I thought, I'm okay. So they got an open meeting law complaint about it. And the Attorney General's office said that because there was a majority of the select board present, and because they were talking about a subject matter that was in their jurisdiction, even though they weren't deliberating amongst themselves, they should have posted the meeting. So in these instances, I recommend that even if you're attending a meeting of another body, you either post it with that other body or you post it individually. You say it's to discuss whatever topic it is, and maybe you don't talk about it at all, but at least you posted it. The Attorney General's office has said that the host committee, let's call it that, is the only one responsible for keeping minutes, not the attending committee. Okay? So it's always best practices. to now post the meeting, even if you don't know you're going to talk, if you think a majority of you are going to be present. Okay. And then the last one is a session of town meeting convened under Section 10 of Chapter 39. You don't have to post that if you go, but many select board members, select boards and finance committee often make decisions right before town meeting. And so you would have to post it for that purpose, but not if you were merely attending town meeting. Okay. And then this next slide is the one we just talked about, so we don't have to dwell on that. So we can go to the next one. So what are the posting requirements for your meeting? Notice has to be posted 48 hours prior to the meeting, excluding Saturdays, Sundays, and legal holidays. Has to be posted in or on the building that houses the clerk's office and be visible 24 hours, 7 days a week. Now, there's alternative posting options, and you've chosen the online option, and that's all. If you want to know how all 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts have chosen, you can go on the website of the Attorney General's office and see, but that's where yours is. And if you change that, you have to notify the Attorney General. It has to include the date, time, and place of meeting, the date and time the notice was posted or amended, and the notice must include the purpose of the meeting and the agenda and any matters the chair reasonably believes will be on the agenda at the time you post it. Again, before 2010, on December 30th of every year, all the boards and commissions would go post outside the clerk's office just a list of all the meetings for the year, and they were like, okay, we're done. But that's not an official posting anymore. You actually have to have the agenda posted. And even though it has to be posted 48 hours in advance, if the day before a meeting something comes up that the chair didn't know about 2 or 3 days before the meeting that needs to be done, wasn't reasonably anticipated, you can amend the agenda to include that, so long as the agenda notes that it was amended and where it was amended. So you can amend something late. You should keep that in mind.
What about, we went through that when there must have been a storm or computer outage or something, and so our online posting was down.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what we did. I think they ran around and tried to post it in the windows, but
Right.
I don't know that was okay. I can't remember now how it was a while ago.
So I don't know that specific situation.
I
If
know
there are,
they tried to post it in the windows, and then somebody said, you can't do that because we voted, the previous board had voted that online.
Yeah. So your official online posting is with the, on the website. So it would depend on the situation. If it was truly an emergency, you had to have an emergency meeting, you can post it anyway. You
Okay.
can let people know. But it depends on the specific situation.
But if it's just like a regular meeting with your regular agenda and
The website goes down.
the website went down for,
Yeah, so then you
you have to
could launch it.
repost?
Yeah, it'd have to repost.
Okay.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the notices as well. So a decision of the Attorney General's office emphasized the importance that all meeting notices include sufficient information regarding the topics to be discussed at the meeting to reasonably inform the public. So it's not enough that well, first of all, you cannot just say new business, old business, approved minutes, right? We can't do that anymore. You could have new business and listed very specific items under new business.
Okay.
And you can have old business, but you have to have specific items. If you're having a public hearing on something, you really need to say what it's about, and if it's a particular address, include the address and the name of the people that are making the application. So you need to have sufficient information for the public to be able to say, oh yeah, that's next door, I might want to go to that meeting. Similarly, for executive session notices, if you're going to discuss litigation and the litigation has been filed, the executive session would have to state the case. If you were going to have negotiations of union contracts, for example, and you were going into executive session for that purpose, you would have to say what union, let's say the AFSCME union or something like that. Now, if you're contemplating filing litigation, but you haven't filed it yet, you don't have to have anything specific, because the point is you don't want to give away the litigating position of the body, so you wouldn't have to. Similarly, for real estate purchases, if it's something that is public and you voted on at town meeting, you would name even if you were still negotiating the P&S, you would put the address. But if you haven't yet announced it publicly and you don't want the price to be driven up, for example, you would just say purchase, exchange, or value of real property, the public discussion of which will, have a detrimental impact on the negotiating position of the body. Any questions on the notices at all?
Makes sense.
Nope, makes sense.
Okay. And I just talked about the litigation positions that, and the purchase of real estate, so we can go over that slide. So there are, as I said, the alternative notice requirements, the municipal website, posting at town hall, cable television, things like that. When the law just changed, this is kind of just a historical fact, and you see how that's posted like that. So when the law changed, a lot of communities did that initially, or I had one community that built a little podium that was undercover outside of town hall, and the town clerk would update the notebook. You could open the thing and update the notebook, or they would do it at the police station and have a rolling scroll of that. So there are alternative methods, but the website is by and large the most popular, as you can imagine. Okay, so an open meeting posting within the 48-hour window. So in the event of an emergency, you do not have to post 48 hours. Now, really, this only applies usually to the select board, maybe to the Board of Health, maybe to the school committee. But most other boards and commissions have no reason to have an emergency meeting. And if one of the chairs calls me and says, Lisa, I need to have a meeting because I forgot, then I say, no, that's not an emergency. Because I forgot doesn't count. So it really has to be a true emergency. And it's a sudden, generally unexpected occurrence or set of circumstances demanding immediate action. We can just go back to COVID. And I had a town, there's a 3-member select board. They were also the Board of Health. And it was right after the March, right before the March shutdown. And they had an exposure at the schools. And they had already closed their town hall, and they did not have website posting. And so they needed to meet like within hours. And the town manager called and said, what do I do? I said, just when are you going to meet? She said, in 10 minutes. I said, okay, go post on the door that you're going to have a meeting. And it's going to be in 10 minutes. Do what you can to let the public know. Because if it's an emergency, it's truly an emergency, and you can be forgiven, but you just need to post it. Doesn't matter. Any questions about that at all? Sometimes it happens like with snow emergencies, things like that. Okay, so let's talk about conducting a meeting. So the open meeting law provides, of course, for remote participation at meetings by members of the public body. That has to be adopted by the select board first, outside of the COVID exceptions, right? So the COVID exceptions last until March of 2027. At least this year. We'll see if they actually change them. But outside, you all would have to adopt and make sure that remote participation is good. The chair of the public body has to announce at the start of the meeting whether there's video or audio recording and whether they're being made, including those by private individuals. So you're supposed to announce that at the beginning of the meeting. The reason for that is not to tell somebody that they can't audio or video record, but to allow the people that are at the meeting to leave if they don't want to be audio or video recorded, or not to say anything. And that's the purpose of that. So a lot of people get confused about that. And they're like, oh, it's going to be on TV. You don't have to record it yourself. So that should be announced at the beginning of the meeting.
Can you clarify, do you mean, because we have people on Zoom, they could record at home, right?
Well, sometimes people come to a meeting
And they
and
bring
they
a
have
recorder too.
they record on their phones, right? If you're
But-
doing it on Zoom, then it's announced, we're doing this on Zoom, people are recording it, you're recording it.
Okay,
for
so
your
that,
cable.
the Zoom covers it. But how do we know that anybody in the meeting room doesn't have their
We
phone?
ha- That's why you ask, right? So you have to ask. So it's illegal in Massachusetts to secretly record somebody,
Right.
right? And so that's why you ask. And if somebody's doing it secretly, well, that's not, you've asked. You can't
Okay, 'cause
control everything.
We don't ask.
Right, so what
No,
would
but
be?
you're going to start asking.
Yes, I know. So
Okay.
what would be the specific language? Just,
Yep.
I'm a script person, so,
What I usually do, and I can give a script to you,
okay.
is say, we're announcing that this is being recorded, so whatever the TV, your cable TV is called.
Yeah.
And then you can say, is anyone else in the room, audio or video, recording this meeting?
Okay.
And if nobody is, say thank you very much, and if they are, say, just raise your hand.
A question on that. Is it still in effect, and all was during COVID, that the chairman had to be present in order to chair the meeting?
You're reading ahead. No, so under the COVID rules, no, you don't have to be all present in this meeting.
What,
Not at all.
Does the chairman have to be present?
No, not in person.
The chairman can chair the meeting if they're not in person.
Right. Under the regular remote participation rules outside of COVID, a quorum has to be present in person, outside the COVID rules. But in the COVID rules, there's no rule about who has to be present and who doesn't have to be present.
Just makes it difficult to hold a meeting if you're
Right,
not in
and you
person.
all can have your own rules about
Okay.
that. Right,
Yes.
right.
So if, just real quick, so if someone else, it does say that they are recording this meeting, they just have to, it's just an acknowledgement?
Just an acknowledgement.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So do you have to ask them their name or anything, or you just say?
Nope,
Okay, thank you for letting us know, or
Yep.
whatever?
that's right.
Okay.
Now, here's the other issue that I'd like to say to my public bodies, is that in a public meeting, different than a public hearing, right? Public meeting is what we have right now. And sometimes within a public meeting, you have a public hearing, which is governed by statute. But in a public meeting, the chair is king, or queen, as the case may be. And the chair does not have to allow anyone else to speak at all, ever. You don't have to allow public comment at all, ever. Now, that's not practical. We understand that. And so there are rules around that we believe and suggest that you adopt. And I'm going to talk about those First Amendment constraints in a little bit. But the basic rule is it's the chair's meeting. And the chair gets to set the rules. And inside a public hearing, of course, those are different rules. Everybody there gets to speak in favor or opposed to a project, announce name and address, and that, you go on for that. But, requiring decorum as part of your general meeting is appropriate. If you have a public comment period, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, the requirement for decorum kind of goes out the window for people speaking in front of you.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that your members, the decorum goes out the window, but the rules related to that are a little bit different. I would also say to you, if you're going to have a meeting available that's in hybrid form, but all of you are going to be present, that your agendas may want to include a notice that if the hybrid option goes haywire, right, you have technical difficulties, that your meeting will continue in your public body. If you don't have that on the agenda, then everybody thinks they can attend remotely, then if you have technical difficulties, you have to stop the meeting. But if you have it on the agenda that you're having a hybrid meeting for convenience only, but the board is meeting entirely in person and it's open to the public, and the public can attend, then you suggest they do, and if the technical difficulties have, you may stop access.
But based on what you just said, what if one or two of our members are remote, but we say that we're still going to continue because we have a quorum
No,
here?
so that's different. No, if you're gonna have, if all of your members are present was.
I know, you did
yeah.
say that, I remember
Yeah,
that.
but if you have members remote, then you're having a hybrid meeting with all your members remote. So you would then have to stop the meeting because you have members that are not available to attend.
So if a member who's remote loses the connection, we have to stop the meeting.
It depends on what you say ahead of time. You just have to give notice to people that you're going to do that. So if you have a member that's remote, but you have a quorum, and you've said, we have a quorum here, we're going to continue the meeting no matter what, and the member loses connection,
Yes.
is unable, then you can continue on, and the member can't participate, because you are having a majority of your people at the meeting,
But we have to say that every single meeting time?
which should be on your agenda. Just
Okay.
be on the agenda.
Okay.
A lot of people don't know these things. I mean, this is all, we've learned this moving along, right? So,
Okay.
yep.
Okay.
All right, so let's talk about public comment. Most recently, we had a case out of Southborough. This is before we started representing Southborough, I just want to say that, called the Barron versus Kalenda case. And the general rule, as I said, unless it's a public hearing, the public has no right to make a public comment unless the chair or the board decides that to be a policy of the board. And once you decide that you allow public comment, it becomes what they call a limited public forum. So this relates back to our flag cases, right? The shirt leaf case out of Boston. So once you allow the public to speak, it becomes a limited public forum. And so you have to treat everybody the same, and you can't cut people off because of what they say. So, but what happened in Barron versus Kalenda, this goes to the decorum issue. So the town of Southborough had a decorum policy, like how you were supposed to behave if you're going to get up and speak in front of the select board. And there was a woman, Barron, who wanted to speak and was not happy with the select board and let them know that in no uncertain terms. And she got cut off and she sat back down. And then she wanted to speak again. She got up and started to speak. She had little signs. She would say things and she called them names and told them that they weren't complying with the open meeting law and all kinds of things, spending the money unwisely in the town. And finally the chair asked her to sit down. She would not, so the chair adjourned the meeting. Said, we're not going to do this meeting anymore. And so she sued them for First Amendment violations. And the court, in fact, said that the board, once they allow public comment, they have to allow the public to speak, and you can't cut them off for content. And you can go to the next slide. And you can only regulate time, place, and manner, right? So a policy that's something like this. We're going to have public comment. It's going to be at the beginning of the meeting. We're going to allow it for 15 minutes. Everybody's going to allow 2 minutes to speak. That's your public comment. Now, the problem is that you got to adhere to that. And we're all human beings. And by human nature, when somebody is saying something that you really like and you agree with, you just let them go on and on, right? And nobody's really paying attention to the 2 minutes. Then somebody gets up there to say something and you don't like what they're saying. And you're like, 1:59, 2 minutes, your time is up. So you can't do that because you can't cut somebody off for what they're saying, the content of what they're saying. You can say, you've spoken too long, we don't have any more time, or you're not going to speak at all. But and then you have to treat everybody the same. Now, the reality is, there are some items on your agenda that deserve a lot of public input, perhaps. And so in those evenings, you want to have a policy that's a little bit flexible. At the beginning of the meeting, before anything has started, the chair announces, look, we have a really important item on our agenda tonight. And there are 50 people here. So that's going to extend, that's going to go beyond our normal public comment period. And we want to hear what you have to say. So tonight, we're going to have a public comment period of a half an hour. Everybody's going to speak for 2 minutes, you get a half an hour, or whatever it is. But you announce that at the beginning of the meeting so that you aren't cutting people off in the middle of it or making rules up along the way. That's all okay. Does anybody have any questions around the public comment?
Well, yes, my question would be like, sometimes we've said, I think we've said to people, can you wait for that agenda item, and then we're going to allow public comment during that
You
item?
can do that so long as the rules are the same, right? So
Okay.
just so long as you have a policy or you announce at the beginning of the meeting, hey, look, we've got a particular couple of items that we want to hear you at on the agenda. And so we're going to let you have your public comment. When we get to that agenda item, everybody's going to be allowed to speak for 2 minutes, and the total time is going to be 10 minutes, or maybe you don't have a total time, right? But you really should give people a time period to speak, because then otherwise you're cutting them off,
Yep.
right? And then it's hard to say if you're cutting them off because of time, you're cutting them off because of content, right? And if they get through half of what they had to say and there's only 3 other people there, you can say, you can go to the end of the line and talk again, right? But you can do it at the agenda item. I try to convince my boards not to get into a back and forth during public comment, because that's not what it is. They're supposed to be giving you information. And if somebody has a general public comment and you're like, oh, we really should put that on our agenda, it's okay for the chair or a member to say, thank you very much, we can't talk about that tonight, but that's really important. We'll put it on a future agenda. Right, because if it's not on your agenda tonight, and somebody brings it up, you can't talk about it, because it's not on your agenda. But, you know, I mean, if somebody gets up and says, look, I don't understand why snowplows haven't plowed my road in 10 days. Well, you can look at Rebecca and say, why hasn't the snowplow plowed it, right? That's different than a substantive item on the agenda.
Are you allowed to say things like, if you're if you see a long line of people,
Yeah.
say, if somebody has already made the point that you're trying to make, it would be helpful to not just repeat it if you have something new, to just present something
Right, but
new.
then you still can't cut them off.
You
can
can't, you
can
gotta-
try to
so you
cajole them
Yes, you can try and ask,
and encourage them,
Yeah,
but you
okay.
can't prohibit them.
so then you still have to let them speak even if they're going to be
Yep.
redundant.
Yep.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
I've seen some boards with, they have timers behind them, and the mic just mutes.
Yeah.
So it's just a way to, just so you get you don't have to follow the
Right.
timing and cut them off. They can see it.
Yep, so there's that, and also I have some boards who have either, if they have the town administrator there, or if there's like a clerk there, or another member, they'll pull up their timer app on their phone and just do that, and they make it loud,
Yeah.
so that when it goes off, the chair knows.
Yeah.
Nobody has to be watching it, the chair knows, excuse me, your time is up,
Yeah.
right? So there are a couple of different ways to do that, becomes very obvious.
Yeah, just seems the most fair.
Right, that's exactly right.
Yep.
That's
And you can change the time allotment according, like if you see, 4 or 5 people, you might be able to give them each 5 minutes or less, or 3 minutes, or maybe if there's 20 people, you might say 3 minutes each
Right, but you need to announce that at the beginning of the public comment period.
in that meeting, but each meeting could be
You
handled
could, and
a
if
little
our
different.
recommendations, you adopt a policy and you give the chair, here are the general rules,
Yeah,
but give the chair the flexibility to announce at the beginning of the
Okay.
meeting
yep,
that there would be changes.
okay, that makes sense.
Now, because they are not constitutionally protected, the following comments may not be permitted. True threats, incitement to imminent lawless conduct, obscenities, personal attacks, statements that were found by a court of law to be defamatory, and sexually explicit statements made to appeal to prurient interests. Now, the one that gets everybody always confused is the personal attacks, right? So if somebody stands up there and says, this board is lousy, like, that's not really a personal attack, right?
Yep.
Because you're all serving in a capacity as a select board. So you have to get some pretty thick skin.
Okay,
But that personal attack is really like, goes after you personally on things, or somebody else personally, not usually the elected politician.
okay.
And then name and address, is that a requirement? I saw something about people
Yeah.
writing that.
So, we always say that for the minutes, give you name and address, and certainly for a public hearing, you can require that, because that goes to that. But for regular public comment, we always say, please, name and address for the record. Somebody does not have to give you their address. They should give you their name to identify themselves for the record. But technically cannot require somebody to give you an address.
Could you just clarify that if, because sometimes we've had forums or open sessions, but we don't call them a hearing because by law, it's not a required hearing? Is the word public hearing meaning that it's something that's required by law?
Well, that's technically a public hearing unless you've called something a public hearing yourself, right? So let's say you're building a new school.
Yeah.
And you want to decide whether it should be located, and, there's a school building committee, but you as the select board want to decide that, you're going to build a new elementary school in one of 3 locations, and you want to know where to support that. You could call that a public hearing. Look, we're going to have a public hearing on where to locate the school. Like, we don't necessarily have the final say on it, but we want to hear what you have to say. So you can call that a public hearing.
Do you have to do the newspaper publish and all that?
No.
Okay, so you can call it a public, okay, because that,
Yeah.
I think I was unclear on that. I know I was unclear on that.
Yeah.
Okay,
But the ones that you're required to have,
okay.
right, those are all newspaper ads and all, but you can call something that you're having a public hearing so that people come and they're giving your input on it, but you have to be clear about what it is.
But if we call it the public hearing, then the public hearing rules apply?
No.
Okay, okay.
Right.
So the public hearing rules, when you say they have to give their name and address, those only would apply to a public hearing?
Statutorily required.
Or
public hearings.
statutorily required? Okay,
Right.
that's what I was trying to say.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Good to know.
So we talked about the Barron versus Kalenda. And I will add that the last thing that's on here is really important. The issue regarding public comment and allowing people to talk does not apply at town meeting. Town meeting is a legislative body. It's specifically exempted from by the SJC from the rules under Barron versus Kalenda. And it's for a specific purpose. And of course, if it's not on the warrant, it can't be discussed. And so the moderator has every right to tell a person that they can't talk about something and to sit down and/or be removed.
Okay.
So the rules under Barron versus Kalenda do not apply at town meeting. Okay, so a lot of times we get into this whole big thing about, well, I'm going to abstain. What does that mean? Does that mean that I'm not actually here, or what about recusal? So this is, these are inner terms that people use back and forth. If you're present and you just decide you don't want to vote, not because of a conflict of interest, you can abstain. Right? Nobody can make you vote on something, but it just means that you're not voting, right? So you can participate in deliberation and just not vote, right? I've seen that happen. That doesn't protect you under the conflict of interest law. You have to recuse yourself under the conflict of interest law. Our recommendation is you leave the room if you have a conflict of interest. You can't participate in deliberations, and you can't vote, and that's a recusal, and that protects you under the conflict of interest law.
Okay.
Now, I will tell you that doesn't mean that as a property owner you couldn't participate. So let's say you were in front of the zoning board and getting a special permit. Your neighbor is getting a special permit, and so you step down from the zoning board, and you're in a butter. You could go sit in the audience and actually participate from the audience.
Okay.
Excuse me, you just can't vote. Okay, so let's talk about a little bit more about the COVID remote participation. So right now, they're good until March of '27. At the start of, if some of you are in person and some of you are remote, you have to announce who's remote. If you're all remote, then the meeting goes on and you announce that. But you have to take a roll call, right? A roll call of attendance. All votes have to be taken by roll call, even if it's only one person that is remote. Members of the public body and each other have to be clearly audible to one another. And when you're holding an executive session and somebody is remote, they have to announce that they're by themselves and there's nothing there that's violating the executive session. But they can participate in executive session remotely. And they're counted as part of the quorum, and they can vote, okay? So there's more flexibility under the COVID remote participation rules. So outside of COVID, this is back to the regular remote participation. The select board, and I don't even remember if you had adopted remote participation as a select board before COVID or not. Do you know? You may have. We'll have to go brush up on that. So the Board of Selectmen decides who has, and you can place restrictions on that too. If you're going to vote to allow all your bodies to do remote participation, you can place restrictions on it. And the chair of the body has to determine that somebody's physical presence is unreasonably difficult. So if I'm a member and I can't go because I'm, thank you very much, in France, then you can determine, I report in and say, I can't go because I'm in France. And you can say, okay, you can remotely participate, that's okay. So the chair has to make that determination. And acceptable methods of remote participation include any technology that enables the remote participant and all persons present at the meeting to location to be clearly audible to one another. What actually is kind of funny about this is, of course, these rules were written before COVID. And I don't know about you, but I remember attending meetings where there was somebody participating remotely and somebody would take out their phone, including flip phones, and throw it in the middle of the table and say, okay, Joe's participating remotely today. Can everybody hear Joe?
Yeah.
And then Joe said, I'm here, I can hear, and of course, nobody could hear what Joe was saying, and Joe couldn't hear what everybody else was saying, but now we've overcome that difficulty with COVID, so it's much easier. So I suspect that they'll rewrite the rules around that. Next slide, please. So again, a minimum requirements is the quorum has to be physically present at the meeting location. This is the pre-COVID rules. The members participating and all those present have to be audible, and all votes still also have to be taken by roll call vote. And again, the chair has to announce that somebody's unable to attend. They have to announce how to access the meeting, and the remote participants can vote and are not deemed absent, and they're allowed to participate in executive session as well. And then if there are technical difficulties, the use of remote participation ineffective, the chair can decide that the person participating remotely can't participate anymore. Okay? So those are all pre-COVID, and maybe they'll all come back or partially come back. I'm not really sure what's going to happen, but we've all gotten pretty used to remote participation.
Right.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about emails, because this is where everybody gets tripped up, because we live our life online and it's so easy. So deliberation, of course, that means on email as well, by and amongst members of the body. And therefore, it can only be limited to the distribution of materials and also scheduling of meetings. We always like to put at the bottom, this email is for distribution of materials only, don't reply all, don't discuss it. Let me give you an example of this. So there was a case by the Attorney General's office. There was a 3-member body that was created to talk about water resources. And they were all really busy people, and the chair's like, I know, I'm going to get my priorities out. So he sent a worksheet out to his 2 other members. It said, fill in your priorities, and then email it back to me. So they all filled in their priorities and emailed them back to him. And the AG's office found that that was a violation of the open meeting law. It was a deliberation. And the reason is that the email out was fine because it didn't have any information on it. But the email back included information about matters under their authority. And there were only 3 of them. And so that was a deliberation. So when he received those two other responses, it was deliberation. So you just have to be careful about things that you send back and forth and fill out.
So it was like a reply all rather than just replying to,
What, even if because there were only 3 members,
okay.
even when
I see
one
what you're saying.
member,
Yes,
right,
yes, okay.
So we have 5 members.
Mhm.
And let's say, we have an agenda coming up where we're brainstorming, and we want to know everybody's ideas.
well, I'm sure you're not doing that on email.
No, but I mean, could you send a list of that to one person to have a list, or should we send that there?
You can send it, it's a really good, you can send it to Rebecca.
Okay,
right?
and she can compile a
it.
big list, and that
Right.
way we don't have to sit there with 5 different lists.
Right.
Trying to blend, okay.
Right, and it's also like
Okay.
decisions, so oftentimes you might, if you were a permit granting body, you might have a decision that you had to issue, right?
Right.
So what, the best thing to do is if the administrator drafts the decision, or even if one of you drafted it, goes to the administrator,
Okay,
then the administrator sends it out for all of your comments. Each of your comments goes back to the administrator. Now, how does it get back to the board? The administrator can do one of 2 things. They can, at a public meeting, hand it out to all of you and discuss it at the public meeting.
okay.
Or, if you want it distributed ahead of the public meeting, you distribute ahead of the public meeting, but you post it at the same time on the website. So everybody has access to it at the same time. So it's the same thing with what you were just saying,
Yeah,
is if there's a compilation of dates and times or
Yeah.
topics, and it goes to the administrator can send it back to you in your packets,
okay.
because those packets are all
Right.
available publicly,
Yeah.
as soon as they-
Well,
or hand it out at the meeting.
our packet, I didn't think was available publicly until we meet.
We usually post it before
Yeah.
the meeting is.
Unless it's executive session.
So we post our agenda and our packet at the same time?
Not at
No.
the same time. We post typically we post the packet after the meeting with all the information.
At the meeting.
At the meeting, that's what I'm asking.
Somebody could ask for that in advance.
Oh, they can?
Sure.
Okay, so if it's distributed, Friday before the meeting, then Friday before the meeting, people should be able to get
Access
access
to
to our packet.
Right.
Okay. We didn't know that. I always thought that it
Okay.
didn't become a public document until we were in the meeting.
No, once all of you have it, because now the whole board has it,
Okay,
public,
okay. We can do that.
except for executive session materials.
Of course.
Right. Okay, we can go to the next slide. That's good. So let's talk about executive sessions. And mostly executive sessions would be this body and maybe the school committee. If the planning board or zoning board or Concom has litigation, then maybe, but otherwise it's this body. And there are a number of reasons to go into executive sessions. I'll go through some of them that you might have reason to go in. When you go into executive session, there's a few things to remember. One, as I said before, it has to be on the agenda, specifically why you're going into executive session, under which exception. 2, you move to go into executive session for that reason. The chair announces whether or not you're going to come back out into public session. You take a roll call vote to go into executive session. Once you're in executive session, you take a roll call vote to come back out of executive session. So those are the big rules. There was recently in April a case where the chair did not announce that they announced that they were coming out of, they were going to come out of executive session, but only for the purpose of ending the meeting. That was it, adjourning. And when they came out of executive session, they went on to have a public item and public discussion.
Oh,
And the AG's office found that that was a violation because before they went into executive session, they said, we're only going to come out to adjourn. So nobody was there. And so that's a problem. So you just need to say whether you're going to come back out or not come back out. So the reasons that somebody might go into executive session, the first is to discuss the reputation, character, or physical condition or mental health of an employee or staff member or an individual. In that particular item, That staff member or individual has a right to be in executive session. They have a right to have counsel. They also have a right to ask for the meeting to be public and not in executive session. So that one has a lot of parameters around it, and so that's an important item. The next is to discuss strategy sessions in preparation of negotiations with non-union personnel or collective bargaining agreements. The next is to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation. If an open meeting will have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the body. You should always say that, too, would have the detrimental effect. The next is to discuss the deployment of security personnel or devices or strategies with respect to that. So you might have to meet with the police department to talk about new strategies they have with respect to safety of personnel around town. The next is to investigate charges of criminal misconduct or to consider the filing of a criminal complaint. The next is to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property if you declare that the open meeting will have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the body. And the next is to comply with an act or under the authority of a general or special law or federal grant and aid requirements. So, for example, the assessors always meet in executive session, and that's because they have a statute that says they meet in an executive session because they're discussing personal financial information, all right? There may be a statute that says that somebody has particular protection that you would have to meet in an executive session about. So that's what that references to. The next is to consider the interview applicants for employment or appointment by a preliminary screening committee. So this is a tricky one. It's also a powerful one. So it has to be a screening committee. It can't be kind of a pseudo screening committee. So if the school committee was going to hire a superintendent, the school committee could say, we're going to have a screening committee. Now, there can be a member of the school committee on that screening committee, just not a majority that would make the ultimate determination. And that screening committee actually meets in executive session every single time. And what is a really unique thing about employment screening committees is that the documents that are kept and the minutes that are kept in that screening committee, except for the finalists, will never be public record.
Oh, okay.
And the idea is to encourage people to apply for jobs in municipalities or government so they don't have to feel like they were in a screening committee and then they're exposed to their current employer, right?
Okay.
So the finalists, their documentation moves forward to the appointing authority, and that all becomes public.
Right.
But those people that were not the finalists all remain private.
Okay.
To meet or confer with a mediator, to discuss trade secrets or confidential, competitively sensitive information. Those reasons we don't usually see in a municipal level. All right? So then let's talk about the minutes a little bit. People always get caught up on some of these things. So the minutes, this is my rule. Minutes are an outline of the meeting. They are not a transcript, right? Minutes are not a transcript of a meeting. Date, time, and place of the meeting, members absent or present, the record of all the votes, a summary of discussion of each subject matter. Now, I have to tell you that, again, human nature is, these people have spoken in our favor, so we're going to write a lot about them, and these people spoke against what we were doing, so we're not going to write so much. There was actually a AG's decision about that, right? So you have to treat everybody the same. A summary of opposed, a summary in favor, or whatever. Just keep it all even in the minutes. And again, it's not a transcript. And then this is the red herring that everybody always forgets. All the exhibits become a part of the minutes, right? And you are supposed to list all of the exhibits on the minutes. So you don't have to, they don't technically have to be attached, they have to be available. But you have to have a list on the minutes of the exhibits you saw during your meeting.
Okay.
Just FYI.
I'm
For
just
the
trying to think of do we do that?
Yeah.
No,
Mm-mm.
we've never
Um,
used the list.
Okay, so then, on the minutes also, they have to be, draft minutes have to be available within 10 days. So, draft minutes. So somebody can come in and get a copy of your draft minutes, you stamp them draft, they're allowed, you have to have them available, right? You have to release regular minutes within a regular period of time. So if you're a body that meets every couple of weeks, you release the minutes every 30 days, you keep on that cycle. If you're a body that meets twice a year, you release the minutes twice a year, right? So, but you do need to make sure your minutes are released on a regular cycle, including your executive session minutes, right? So you should regularly review your executive session minutes. Now, they don't all get released, right? Because if you're, the matter for which the executive session was held is not over, and it may not be over for years, by the way. I have minutes that I've had in probably 8 or 9 years in a particular community because the matter's not over. They just don't get released. But other minutes that might, you might have, let's say you're in negotiations for a contract and you settle the contract and the minutes are available. All right. So the timeline for enforcement, so complaints under the open meeting law have to be made within 30 days of when the person reasonably should know the violation occurred. Of course, if you have a secret meeting that nobody ever knew about, and then somebody finds out about it 6 months later, chances are they're going to be able to complain about it at that time. Within 14 days of receipt of the complaint, you have to take any necessary remedial action to fix the problem and/or respond to the complaint. Now, let me tell you, in my world, the open meeting law is the easiest thing to fix. Because all you have to do is have another meeting and discuss what you shouldn't have done, right? So if you figure out, oh, darn, I didn't have that on the agenda right, or, oh, we should put that, we didn't post that correctly. You just, on your next meeting, you have an agenda item, clarification or, compliance with the open meeting law, discussion of, the weather outside, whatever it is, and just fix it, and then you're done. So when you respond to the person who's made the complaint, you say, we fixed it, and we've come to it. But sometimes people complain and you haven't done anything wrong, in which case you need to tell the person, and we usually have a response prepared, that you haven't done anything wrong. We always copy the AG's office on that, so they get that response. Because there are plenty of times people complain, and you've not done anything wrong. You've complied with the law. And then the AG will determine whether or not a complaint warrants an investigation, and they will issue a determination, a written determination. So they resolve it by, requiring immediate and future compliance, attendance at a training session, something like this. They require, like, if you didn't do the minutes, to do the minutes, right? They want you to fix the problem that was the problem. The worst thing that can happen is nullifying the action taken by the public body. So, as I just said a minute ago, recently in April, there was a decision about this body that went into executive session and then came back out. The person making that complaint actually asked the AG's office to nullify what was done in executive session, and then they came back out and did again. In that instance, they did not do that, but that is probably their strongest enforcement mechanism, because you can imagine you make some really important decisions, and so you can imagine that if the AG could nullify that decision, that could have huge ramifications. So that's why you want to fix whatever you might have done wrong. They could issue fines. I've not, 15 years that this has happened, I've not seen any fines issued. But that doesn't mean that they won't do it, but I've not seen it. Again, you're deemed to know because you've gotten a copy of the open meeting law, and now you've had this fantastic presentation that you shouldn't be violating anything. And then, so therefore, it would be considered willful if you violate the open meeting law. They also have this thing that they do mediation, so we've never seen this happen, but like, if you have somebody who's a constant complainer, that they'll set up a mediation to discuss that problem. We've not seen that happen. And again, the certification, you've gotten the open meeting law, so you have to certify that you get it when you sign and you get sworn in. And the goal is to make sure you prevent repeat problems. And then we recently gave an advisory on keeping minutes, so I think that we should be close to the end here. So I think that by and large, our overview is you can comply with the open meeting law. You already pretty much do it. There may be nuances here and there you might want to check on. The idea of running a meeting that follows the rules, even if it's not the Robert's Rules of Orders. I don't know if you've adopted Robert's Rules or not. You have, so you can follow those, but you're not required to do that. If you've adopted them, those are the ones you should follow because it's a policy of the board. And the open meeting law kind of comes over as an umbrella over the Robert's Rules, and have a civil and open discussion is the goal of most public bodies. So I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Any questions from anyone?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay.
No, I think we're good. We've
Yeah.
gotten a lot of information.
Yes. Will this presentation be made available to us?
She's got it.
Okay, I was trying to take notes, but
Yep.
there were some things
Yeah.
I just couldn't keep up
Got it.
with, so
Yep.
Has to
This
be part of
is-
the minutes, right? As an exhibit?
it does, it
Well, you have
does.
to not exhibit, you have to just list it.
Listed.
Just list it,
List.
yes. No, that was great, that was,
Yep.
I did learn quite a bit, just when I thought I knew everything, no.
No,
Nope.
there's always something that pops up. You just never quite know. There's
Yeah.
so much that's going on, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Well, thank you,
You're
Lisa, for your
welcome.
time, I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Lot of
Good to see you all.
information. We evidently need more training than we realize.
I know, I know,
We realize that now.
good stuff.
We just don't know it all.
We
Thank you.
don't.
Have a good
Thank
evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so next up on the agenda is public comment. Were there any public comment requests submitted? Nope. And for department comment? Nothing to report? Okay. So now discussion and possible vote. So we have a pretty hefty agenda, so as we review and discuss the agenda items this evening, some topics may require additional review and preparation by select board members. So just as we're going through this, certain items will be carried forward to upcoming meetings
Okay.
because it's a lot to discuss. And I want to make sure there's sufficient time for everyone to review to make sure we have thoughtful discussion before we jump into votes. So I just want to declare that up front. But first up, we have the Langley Adams Library hours change. This is acknowledgement of updated library operating hours. In our packet, a letter from the library director, Darcy Lepore, has been included. And this updates the hours from on Wednesday. So it looks like Wednesday before it was 1 to 8, and now they're doing 10 to 8.
It doesn't require our vote.
It doesn't require our vote, just an acknowledgement.
Okay.
So I can just read it. On June 10th, 2026, the Board of Library Trustees voted to adjust the library's open hours. As of July 1st, 2026, the library will be open 10 to 8 on Wednesdays, increasing our open time on Wednesdays by 3 hours. Please be assured that the staff schedule has been adjusted as needed and does not interfere with the fiscal year 2027 operating budget. The new hours for the library as of the first day of the fiscal year 2027 will be Monday, 1 to 8, Tuesday, 10 to 5:30, Wednesday, 10 to 8, Thursday, 10 to 5:30, Friday, 10 to 5, Saturday, 10 to 2. It is our goal to share this information with the public widely and to continue to serve the community as much as we can. Sincerely, Darcy Lepore, Library Director. So just thank you to Darcy and the library staff for making this possible. Next up, we have the Sewell Street Quarry Bond Release Request. This is review and consideration of a request for release of the quarry bond. The town administrator did provide a memo and supporting documentation for the board's review, but the current owner has formally requested the release of the bond funds held by the town, so we are being asked to review the history of the permits, evaluate whether the original purpose of the financial guarantee has been fulfilled, and determine whether the bond funds should be released. And Rebecca, is there anything else to add to that for our discussion? No?
Nope, that pretty
I'm
much
trying to,
sums
I'm
it up.
trying to be better about this.
I
Yes.
appreciate that.
Yes.
Very nicely done.
Yes, thank you. Hello there.
Hey.
Can you state your name?
William Daly, 7 Hemlock Lane, Groveland,
Okay.
Mass.
Great, thank you.
So you guys should have everything on the project. There was a bunch of agreements between the town and all the prior owners, court cases, all that, to get the place reclaimed. It's, reclaim is complete, no more safety issues, and we would like to apply for the release of the escrow monies.
Okay. Are there any questions for Mr. Daly before we go into a vote?
Are we just referring to the most recent escrow monies, or are we referring to this history of, there's been several owners, right?
Yeah, so in the
I
agreement, it
remember.
says that, you know, it goes down the line, right? It follows its successors. Aggregate Industries or its successors, which, second in line after them.
And there's two separate bonds. There's one that was posted originally by Trimount back in 1981. And then
Okay.
there was a second bond that was posted by Mr. Daly with $75,000.
Okay, so you located that. And what about aggregate? Not,
Trimount became aggregate.
Yeah,
I'm
so
out.
what happened was
Okay.
back in the 80s, Aggregate, Trimount, they put up three $20,000 cash bonds. But they were supposed to reclaim each tract before they started the next one, and they didn't, because it was cheaper to pay the $60,000 for the three tracts. So
Okay,
that
so-
money sat in escrow.
so that 60,000 is, are you asking for that to be released as well?
That's the only thing I'm asking for to be released.
So that's the $83,000.
Oh, it all adds
And that's the
up.
amount that we got confirmed by the bank who's holding the bond monies.
Okay,
That's
so that-
because of interest accrued?
Correct.
All right, 'Cause so that includes, the others have forfeited their right to whatever they, because I know they tried to fill the quarry and they stopped.
Yeah,
That would
that.
transfer with.
everybody failed.
Yes, they did.
So it would be up to the current owner to prove that the monies through his purchase of the property are his to claim. For us, it's just a matter of deciding whether or not those monies need to be held for any further purpose in which it was originally established. So we have the documentation that Mr. Daly had provided, but again, that doesn't necessarily fall to us in our jurisdiction. We would just, if the board wanted to, release those bond monies, and then he would take the release as well as the deeds and the documents that he has, and he would need to take that to the bank and make a case that those monies belong to him now, that he owns that property.
Okay, so we're saying that with the purchase of the property and the other owner not having fulfilled the filling in, the town retained those bonds or whatever, right? And then another one was taken out?
So there was a separate bond that was posted, I believe you provided the documentation.
Yeah, I think Catherine's a
Yeah,
little
I'm looking
confused.
through it.
So
yeah.
there were
I'm not
three,
confused, I'm just making sure I understand that.
there were three $20,000 bonds from
Okay.
81 to probably 83 with Trimount. Let's call them aggregate.
I'm thinking more recently, like when they tried to fill it in,
I gave a
Maybe
$75,000 performance bond for any
before you though, before you, somebody tried to fill it in, I thought.
aggregate.
Yes,
Yeah,
and,
same people that
but
own
not
it.
in the 80s, this was more,
Correct, in the 2000, they did
yes,
that. Yes.
okay, that's what I'm referring to.
Trimount was the one that took the rock. They're the ones that put up the $20,000 for three tracks,
Okay,
which was $60,000, three times over maybe 18 months.
okay,
In 2000,
yep,
they changed the name to Aggregate Industries
yep,
and attempted to fill it in. And
Yes.
that's when everything washed out, right? That's when
okay, and was there a bond then?
No, those bonds are still in place. There was a
Oh,
lot
was
of
there?
back and
Okay,
forth.
so the old bonds were,
Yes,
Okay.
yes, there was a lot of argument. I think the town actually sued Aggregate
That's what
to
I'm
get
thinking.
going on it.
Yep.
There was a lot of stuff going on. And 2000 really brought up a real lot of stuff.
right, so I think that got shut
That-
down.
That got shut down. Then
Okay.
it was sold in 2005 to Bob Rotunda and Billy Tebow. You guys probably remember those days, and they were trying to permit in 2013. I think Mike might remember them up at
Conservation probably
up at
remembers it
VZ
all.
Park.
Yes,
See
Yeah.
that on The November 17th, 2000 document.
Yes.
Item 4, a cash escrow in the present amount of $70,892 is currently being held by the town of Groveland and shall continue to be held in the issuance, held to ensure the restoration by Aggregate Industries of their quarry located off of Sewell Street. So
Okay.
that continued on again even in 2000. It wasn't until later in the document that R&D Site Development provided
Yep.
that it established a new bond of $75,000.
But
which
that
is
was just
separate
for
from
Sewell
the-
Street and Salem Street, for any damage.
Okay, so there are two bonds then,
There are
So
3 bonds.
three.
There's 3 bonds, 20,000 apiece, which are now, after 43 years, went from 60,000 to 82,000.
Okay, and then there's this 75,000.
That's just a bond. The others were cash.
Okay.
This is just a performance bond.
So that, we're not voting on that?
No,
So this
no,
we're not
that's,
voting on.
no.
This
Okay.
evening, the only thing that is present before us is the cash bond of the $83,000.
If you could scroll back, Rebecca, I
Right.
think there's one of those paragraphs in there.
And the select board, we're responsible for the fill part of this whole thing, right? That's under our jurisdiction, filling in, removing soil, that stuff?
Correct.
Yes.
And there were the
Okay.
conditions that were
Yeah.
in the memo in regards to
Correct.
stabilizing the property, et cetera.
Okay.
Can you go down a little to find that spot where it says it's successes?
Oh, that one is up here.
Yeah, I saw that. But my question is, like, how do we know that it's stabilized? Do we just say, yup, looks stable, or do we have an engineer or somebody that looks at it and says it's,
You can go by the cliff.
I mean, it looks stable.
The cliff is
I'm
gone.
just wondering, yeah, I know we have to vote when they're removing things and all of that. We used to have like a town engineer or somebody that advised.
In the planning realm, things are a little different. We would have an as-built, or we would have an engineer review the plans, et cetera. In this particular situation, we don't necessarily have that. I would say that, as Mr. Daly had mentioned, the site has been completely filled and is now being built upon.
Yep.
So one would argue that in order for him to get proper building permits, et cetera, the compaction and the stability of the site
It's
with
paved.
those structures would be substantial, and therefore he would have, filled the quarry in correspondence
Correct.
with the approval. But, I mean, that is me making an assumption as a non-engineer.
Right.
I mean, we have 2 occupancy permits in the area that was quarried, buildings 1 and 2, both
Yep.
that area. And the rest is paved, sidewalks, landscaped, so it's, maybe, I'm not opposed to anyone going up there, that's fine.
No, I mean, visually, it looks fine. I just didn't know if we're not required to do more than just say.
See, the main
it
reason
appears to be stabilized.
the main reason I'm trying to push this along, because I believe Aggregate is also trying to claim these monies,
Oh, yeah.
so I need to get ahead of that.
And again, that's
That's
That's not our
owners,
property.
That's not.
Well, it is, because you guys are on the account.
Well, we're the
You
ones
could
that,
sign it, you could sign off, and they could go get the money.
And so could,
we can decide who it goes to? No.
It's in an account under Aggregate and you guys.
Okay. So when we release it, it goes to,
I'll have to prove to the bank that I'm the successor, but that's what I mean. If you could release
That's
to
your
Aggregate, they're gonna go and grab their money when they didn't do anything,
right. But we're being asked to release the money.
to me.
we're not going to be releasing it to
Yeah,
anyone.
yeah,
We are
you're not gonna
just
cut a
going to be
check.
Releasing the money. And
Okay,
it's
that's
up
what
Yeah,
I'm trying to
yeah.
get to.
decide and
Okay.
aggregate to decide whose money.
So our vote won't release it to you. You're going to have to be able to prove.
Your vote will release the reclamation, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
It will be per the approved decision back in 1981 with the corresponding documentation, which will state that the site has been brought to the
Yeah.
caliber as, established as part of the original conditions and is stabilized, and therefore the town of Groveland releases those monies held for such purpose. Whoever takes that document, and again, whether it be Aggregate or Mr. Daly, is entirely up to them to make those cases. That is not for the town.
So it seems important that we have the right wording.
There's a motion.
Yeah, it's in the memo.
Okay.
Page 8 on your packet. You'll see,
I'm on page 29, but I'll go back
Okay.
up to the agenda.
I would think you would need to sign the withdrawal slip if you're on the account, right? I mean,
I'm not on that.
well, the town, right? I mean, I would think, right?
So what, all that we would do is we would make this motion and we would document the motion as well as the information as provided in the board
Yeah.
packet, and we would provide that to you, and then it would be up to you to decipher what the bank would like to do and what
Okay.
additional documentation is necessary. If they had come forward with additional documents
Yeah.
that need the board signature.
Right, they may need a
that's
release or
conversation.
something. Gotcha, okay. Yep, that's fine.
Are all the buildings complete?
No, October will
Okay.
be done, but everything's complete right up to the top almost. I think Building 3
Yeah.
will be done end of August, so, but it's functioning. I mean, pool should be open soon. It's, you know, it's pretty sharp up there.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Nope.
All set.
Anyone want to make a motion? Feel ready to do that?
Sure. I'll make a motion that the board determine that all conditions of the earth removal permit for the Groveland Quarry on Sewell Street have been completed to the satisfaction of the board in accordance with 235-9B2 of the town's earth removal bylaw, and authorize the release of the bond currently being held in the amount of $83,382.68, together with any interest accrued thereon.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? No? Okay, all in favor?
No.
All right,
Thank you
4
very
in
much.
favor, 1 absent.
Hopefully you're not
Thank
here
you.
too late tonight.
This went quicker than I thought, so that's good.
Well, it's
So
been
far.
dragging on for a very long
Right, right.
time.
It's a big history lesson.
Yeah, right.
All right, so next up we have the field use fees, application process, and requirements review. So this is a discussion and possible action regarding current field use fees, application procedures, scheduling processes, and related policies for use of town athletic and recreation fields. So this is an agenda item that may be discussed over multiple meetings. The town administrator has provided a document with potential recommendations and comments from town staff. And I'd like to begin this agenda item with Steve Baker to present his recommendations and thoughts.
Sure. Yeah, this is something that we had, I think, started to talk about maybe last fall, but obviously we had a lot going on at the time, so we decided to revisit it in the future. When we had found out, I think a couple, maybe 2 months ago, that one of the major leagues that was using fields was no longer going to be continuing, that obviously, you know, kind of reminded me anyway that we needed to bring this back up. And so in the packet is a document that I had worked on with the town administrator's office, and there's some comments in there around potential options based on what some other towns are doing. I think what's also kind of come to light, and maybe Rebecca could speak to this, but you know, we've also been having conversations, I think, with the different leagues about field maintenance and things like that. And so I think that just highlights the need that we have to take a closer look at this, understand, you know, one, what we should be charging for permits and how to keep that reasonable, but also what the burden is from a maintenance perspective to keep the fields up and make sure that we're doing things, you know, the way that we're supposed to in terms of procurement and things like that. I have a few ideas, but I'll stop there in case anybody else has comments or things that they'd want to bring up.
Ed, do you have any comments or questions on this?
I'm all set.
Okay. Kathy?
Well, I thought we were doing this over multiple meetings.
Oh,
I
I
thought
just-
Steve was going to keep
Oh,
going
okay.
and just.
Just initial thoughts, I guess.
Well, I just feel like overall, what's needed probably is an indicator of how much money we're collecting right now and how much would we expect to collect with a change in the rules. Because I see through the description, some things are going to be, they'll be paying less money for use of the fields, and some, it'll depend. And so I think overall, I know you've mentioned it, there's some kind of an estimate of the cost of maintaining the fields to the towns. So I think it's healthy to have this discussion over a few meetings for that reason, to know this is how much we estimate we're spending to maintain all these properties. this is how much we're collecting right now towards that endeavor, right? I don't know if you want to do it by field or by sport, or it doesn't matter to me. Do it either way, all different ways, maybe. Because it's a lot of different information, and I just want to make sure that we don't have to keep coming back to this and going backwards and forwards again. You know, that we come up with something that we can all live with, that it's as simple as we can make it, yet reflective of what it's costing us to make these available, right?
Yeah.
Is that what we're trying to do? Are we trying to cover all the cost, or are we trying to just offset some of it? I mean, what's the goal here?
Yeah, I mean, I personally don't think we're gonna be able to cover all the costs with permit fees. I think something that had come up at a previous meeting was, I think there is a field maintenance revolving fund, if I'm not mistaken, and one thing that had come up was maybe in some way partially funding that, so I do think that's something we'll have to look at, because I don't think, especially, and maybe you can speak to this a little bit, especially given that historically, in some cases, volunteers have done a lot of work on the fields, or leagues have potentially paid for someone else to come in and do that work. We can't do that anymore, as I understand it. It has to go through the town, so that means that the town has to pick up those costs. Maybe you can-
Okay.
And when we say if the volunteers want to continue to volunteer, then they're more than welcome to volunteer.
Correct.
But the issue becomes when the volunteers start to issue contracts on property that they don't own. So then
Correct.
they're contracting with landscaping companies and others to come in and alter town property, and that becomes a problem. So, and those types of initiatives, we've been trying to encourage fields to, or field users to come to the highway department and say, hey, we want to redo our infields and we really want to contract out to a contractor. They gave us a quote for X. We would then follow up and we would get our own quotes and we would help facilitate that process. And then the leagues, if they wanted to donate towards that cause, would go through us and we would still make sure that the contractor was selected by proper procurement, that prevailing wage rates were done, and that it was carried out to the fullest terms on town property, and we would have documentation of what work is happening on town property. So if there was ever an issue in the future, we would then have ways in reaching back out to that contractor saying, why did you put the irrigation here? The irrigation's not working anymore. And we would be fully aware again of what's happening on town property. But if a volunteer is bringing a weed whacker in and mowing the side, or trying to take the rake and raking it, those are all completely acceptable activities. Cleanups, everything that they've been doing when it's based on volunteers, again, is something that is still allowed. It's just when the level of work and involvement goes to the fact that you're paying somebody else to do
The
that
contract,
work.
they can't issue contracts. on that,
Exactly.
yeah. Okay, and then, so again, I come back to the, it'd be good to think about, like, we refer to the other towns, and when we say that, the words keep coming up again, the industry or the regular surveyor of the town seems to be, this is what they do. Does anybody know what their goal was when they set their rates? Are they trying to recover all costs, or are they trying to just, I mean, because right now, we're just trying to look like them in some cases.
No,
You know what I
think-
mean? Like, I just want to know what what is the goal? And to know the goal, we need to know can we get the actual cost to maintain what we're spending right now in today's dollars? Maybe for the next meeting. But I think this is great, because I think we totally have to do this.
And so, along those lines, though, one suggestion that I had, and this is certainly something that we can talk about, whether it's tonight or at another meeting, is I thought it might make sense to maybe send this to the Recreation Committee to take a look at from two perspectives. One is to talk to the leagues to understand, especially because I think it's really relevant to the in-town leagues and regular users of the field, to understand what requirements they have for field maintenance and kind of get a sense of what they're doing versus what the town needs to be doing. And then also maybe to collect some of that maintenance data and bring that back to us at some point. I thought that would be a good use of the Recreation Committee's time. I have spoken to the chair. It's something they'd be willing to take on if we wanted them to.
Well, I don't want to abdicate our responsibility. So I want to be clear about that we're responsible for these
Sure, they
rates.
would come back to us.
And I'm not yet asking them for their prices. I don't want them to set the prices. I like the idea of getting their input on what people are doing voluntarily, because I think that plays into, what are we trying to recover here? Are we trying to just, recover some of the costs? Because obviously these, if they're residents, they're already paying their taxes, right? So they're already paying that, and now we're saying pay this as well. Yeah, so I mean, I would like to hear their input on what they're continuing to do on a volunteer basis, or what they think they can continue to do on a volunteer basis. And I would like to know if they fully understand the thing that they can't contract and change town land. Not to hold them up, but that would be helpful. And I guess there's a revolving fund you mentioned
Correct.
for, what's the purpose of that fund?
So the original purpose was part of the Pines Recreation Area. And
Oh.
so then when we implemented field use permits,
Yep.
we evolved the revolving account and just made it for the parks, and maintenance.
Oh, okay, so
And
this
that
was the,
included, work at the Shanahan, work at Washington Park, and the like.
okay, and this, because that revolving fund at one time had a fairly significant amount of money from the earth removal.
Exactly. That is no longer the case.
So is it an in and out account right now? Does it zero out pretty much?
It does not support the ongoing costs associated with the facility. So, for example, putting the lights on at the Pines, or the water usage at the Pines for the bathroom, or if the bathrooms are broken at the Pines, or if the irrigation is having an issue. So they don't cover those costs that we know are going to happen, or we should be adding a contingency for as an emergency case. The money is mainly supported, and the majority of the money is from the Groveland basketball, which we kind of, again, try and hold separate from the recreation areas, because it's really a different purpose, especially where it goes back into, buying the shirts for the kids, the gym usage time at the Bagnell. So that's the account that's actually doing very well within that larger revolving account, but the
Okay.
rest of the fees are not supporting the other activities at those other locations, specifically, again, being the Pines, Washington Park, and Shanahan.
And
Oh, okay, so, for the basketball, I just want to understand do we charge the basketball right now at Bagnell?
We don't charge them anything.
Okay.
The monies that they bring in, because they are not a separate nonprofit, it is a town-sponsored, so every single fee that they charge
Oh,
is
okay.
coming directly to us.
And
So
that's
that
why
means
you're
if you
buying the
sign your child
T-shirts.
up and you have to pay $50 for your child, it goes directly to the town of Groveland, and we put it in that account. So when they have to do referees, or when we have to, again, pay the Pawtucket Regional School District for practice time for the custodian, that all comes out of our account, but we're collecting the money directly. Whereas in these other cases, those individual leagues are collecting the money from the families, and then
Right.
they are distributing it how they see appropriate.
So do you think it's still okay to have both in the same revolving account, since the other accounts, the other part of the revolving account from these fees, we're not buying T-shirts and things or nothing, we're just talking about covering the maintenance of that
Correct.
field?
So we've been keeping them separate internally, but we can, if the board would like, to try and have us separate them. It's just with the revolving account, it gets a little tricky when they're relatively the same purpose, but we can certainly separate it out if that's what the board wishes to.
Well, it seems very different if the town is collecting the full basketball fee and then buying the supplies, the referees and all that, where in the other case, a private organization that we're not responsible for is collecting the fees. So we have nothing to do with the fees they collect from their players.
Correct.
And the only thing we're going to do is charge a field use or a player fee or something like that,
I
right?
think what our thought
Yep.
process was is that in the recreation committee and their new mission after so many years has been to be more involved with the recreational activities townwide, and to maybe move in the direction of a recreation department, not necessarily just a recreation committee, and trying to have more programming that we can sponsor as a town, not
Yep.
having and relying on outside leagues and other opportunities, after school type of situations, and camps during summer vacation, and not summer vacation, but school vacation and things like that. And so those kind of tie more directly to what you're saying as part of the basketball, where the fees would come in directly to the town. So I think we were just holding it together until we had a more longer-term plan. But to your point, you're very correct in stating that it does operate a little differently than the others.
Right, and especially if what you're trying to explain is that the Recreation Committee may, in the future, want to access the revolving account for other town-sponsored activities, where I would just think either a separate category in that account or a separate revolving account, because the one thing I would not want to have happen is the basketball fees to start subsidizing
Yes.
a private or sports organization when the parents that are paying into the basketball program are paying into a town-sponsored activity. So if we wanted like a town-sponsored recreation activity account, then I could
completely agree
see
with you.
like.
We've been trying to
yeah.
do that again internally for the same reason that you're expressing.
Okay.
We just haven't physically separated them, but to your point, it might be best to just do that. And we can make that happen at the next town meeting if the board, at the town meeting votes
Well,
that.
if you think it's necessary, or if you just can separate it within the, just to keep it the identity, because again, to me, it's very different for the private sports organizations that collect a fee, that, to make it clear that we have nothing to do with what they do with the money that they collect, other than what they pay to the town. Whereas the other one, we're liable, right? Our treasurer is liable for that money, yes.
Right.
Very different, yeah. Okay, but this is, I think, a good start.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Steve, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, not at all. I mean, I think, like I said, I think the one ask that I have of the board is that we at least send that first, if we don't want to have the recreation committee look at, what the maintenance costs are, at least have them maybe work with the individual leagues to understand what they're doing today versus what the town needs to be doing going forward. I think that would be a great ask of them.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I think they should get a first look-see at what other towns are charging and
Yep.
whether or not this would impact what they're collecting by a large amount or not. I don't know.
So
Yeah.
would the ask be for them to come back with kind of a mock-up of that?
Well, to let us know, like, based on what other towns are collecting, I guess that's our general recommendation column for discussion seems to be based on what other towns are charging, but what I don't know is what are our sports leagues maybe not charging as much per player as other towns, and would this cause them to have to
Right.
raise the rates to their players? And if so, is that going to be an okay thing to
Right,
do?
right.
I mean, if it's a significant raise, like it's a doubling, I would say maybe it has to be steps, because
Agreed.
everybody at home has a budget, right?
Yep.
So it's hard when you have to all of a sudden come up with twice as much money.
Right.
For your child to play a sport. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. It's like, I see these costs as not too horrible looking, but I don't know, what they're collecting from players. I don't know that. If they could provide us some of that
Yep,
background.
yeah, I think that's a great, I think that isn't something that I had thought about having them look at what other, like, private leagues in other towns are charging in relation to what that town's
Right,
maybe
and-
permit fee is. No, it's a good point. It's a good-
And in fact, what are they charging right now, and how does our fee
Yep.
impact what they're charging right now? Would we be taking almost all the money that they're picking up, and they wouldn't have anything left
Right.
for the gear? I assume part of what they collect for is gear and referees and
All that stuff, yep.
all that good stuff, yeah. Fun. This is good, though.
Yeah.
I mean, do we need to vote on that, or can we just send something to the recreation committee asking them to look at that
We
stuff?
should vote on it, yeah.
I think
You
it
made
makes
the
sense
face.
to collectively have an initiative.
Okay, so the request, and feel free to amend if I leave out, would be to ask the Recreation Committee to review the recommended column versus the peer towns, and to provide to us what they are collecting per player? I assume they collect per player,
Yeah.
right?
In most cases.
In which case, that would kind of show us what our, I mean, we would know that. If they told us what they're collecting for each player, that would tell us right away
Right.
what this change would do. Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I guess not just that, like, out of what they collect, the percentage that they require for equipment, do they buy the kids' equipment or not? I don't know.
It varies from league to league. I don't know that any, like, nonprofit leagues would disclose that information. They'll give you because you can find what they charge per player per season on their website. You know, they're most likely not gonna give you their internal financials.
Right, I'm not really asking for that, I'm asking more so, what would be the best way to ask them to talk to us about if we go with this charge?
The per player fee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What does that do to their per
Yeah,
player?
so I think what we would want them to look at is for surrounding communities that have private recreational leagues, what the cost to play in that league is versus the cost of the permit fee.
Yep,
That's probably the starting point.
yes, that actually would be a good starting point, because we have some information, but not,
And then,
right?
the only other thing I would add to that is the looking at understanding, working with the in-town leagues to understand what their maintenance requirements are. Like what's being done via volunteers today versus what the town needs to do.
Exactly, and I guess towards that end, through the Recreation Committee, how do they funnel their requests for assistance?
Yep.
I don't know anything about that.
Could we also get a count of how many players? So if we look at like the youth sports, it's a $200 flat fee. Are there like 300 players?
It varies from league to league
goes-
pretty,
yeah.
pretty
Okay.
mildly.
And then that was just the fee part?
Yep.
So the second page has
The
additional
permit
recommendations?
language.
Yeah, permit language. Are we going to request them to dive into that or just stick with the fees?
I'd say let's keep it narrow for now, because I
Okay.
think the language is probably,
Right.
You have
And
to
I
put,
do know that we're working on an inventory
Okay.
of all of our fields to get a better understanding of what infrastructure currently exists and to what, Select Board Member Castronelis was saying, what we're responsible for, what we do,
Okay.
so that we can identify that. So if we have new restrooms or if we have other things that are being brought forward, the town should really focus more on covering the liabilities associated with such.
Yes.
So we're already in the process of working on language that might be helpful to the conversation, whether it be to the Select Board or the Recreation Committee, at least giving a starting point.
Excellent. Okay.
okay, so we still need to vote on that motion, right?
Yeah, we didn't, no one made a motion. That was almost a motion, but not quite.
All right.
okay, so we're not going to go to the additional yet,
Not
right?
today, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I agree. So, the motion is to request from the Recreation Committee, by their youth sports, we can ask them what they're charging per player, right? That's okay to ask?
What in town, yeah.
Because that's a public,
That's all
because
public.
they post that on their flyer when they
Yeah,
say,
exactly.
sign up, it's gonna cost you, $30 a player.
Yeah.
Okay, and, then if they feel there's other information that we need to know, like expenditure-wise, that's private, but it's up to them if they want to tell us.
Yep.
Things like give us a ballpark. I mean, I'm not quite sure whether, kids buy their own mitts, but they had a T-shirt,
Right.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, that would be a good start, I think.
And then to understand, again, in other communities, what the permit fees are compared to that.
Yes, it'd be nice to know for the other communities too, yep. Okay. So that's my motion. So to know, for our leagues, the motion is to find out, ask the sports leagues to share with us what they're charging per player, and then who is gonna find out what other leagues are doing
We
it?
could have recreation do that.
Our Recreation Committee will find out what other towns' leagues are charging per player, so that we can compare that to the fee they're charging.
Yep.
That would be good, that's my motion then.
And I'll make a friendly amendment to that they also meet with the league, or speak to the leagues and understand what their maintenance requirements are.
Okay, yep, that that's fine. That's the whole motion then.
Motion and a second with amendment. All right, all in favor?
Okay, thanks.
All right, 4 in favor, 1 absent. Okay, so for the next agenda item, due to my affiliation with the Groveland Democratic Town Committee, I'm going to recuse myself. I'm going to turn this item over to Steve for handling, and based on our training, I leave the room when I recuse myself.
I know, we gotta
So-
kick your butt out. I didn't even leave the room for Whittier, but,
All right.
okay.
I am gonna get back down to that section. And I'm just getting to that section of the agenda, 1 second. Didn't think I missed that. All right, so agenda item, pride flag, discussion and vote to approve a pride flag to be raised at Town Hall during the month of June, and there is a letter that was attached to that. I can go ahead and read that, I guess. It's dated June 17th, 2026. To whom it may concern, we are writing to request an official pride flag be raised annually at Town Hall on June 1st through the 30th for the celebration of Pride Month. We feel this will serve as a powerful beacon of inclusivity, allyship, and visibility while respecting the struggle and resilience of our LGBTQ plus community. It is important to us that our friends, family, neighbors, and visitors feel safe and welcome in Groveland. This has become a common practice in towns and cities across the nation, and we look forward to joining the good people of the world in celebrating Pride Month too. We appreciate your consideration. Gratefully, the Groveland Democratic Town Committee.
Stephanie Bartelt. I live on Chestnut Street in Groveland, Vice Chair of the Democratic Town Committee. Just here to answer any questions if you like. The Democratic Town Committee is willing to purchase the flag.
Okay. My question, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask towards the town administrator first, is that I know we put a flag up for the Ukraine, but was it because it was another country? That's why we couldn't put it on a flagpole?
So I did some research, and to be honest with you, the conversation back in 2022 was not very clear. I did also rewatch the recording of that meeting.
Okay, thank you.
And the vote of the board was to, a motion was made by Selectman O'Neill and seconded by Selectman Castronellis that Selectman McDonald do the legwork to find out what is required to properly fly the Ukrainian flag on town property and report back to T.A. Oldham with what he finds. There was no other official vote. It was never
Oh.
officially hung on any of our posts. It was put outside.
That's what I remember.
But there was no, again, official vote from the board that I could find in regards to that issue. So there was a discussion and some back and forth, and what I gathered from that meeting was that there was some concern on what could be hung on the flag post, not that they were necessarily not in favor of supporting such cause,
Yes.
but just that was it proper and what was the proper procedure. And again, with no official formal vote, I do not have any documentation to back that up in terms of the decision and why it was made.
Okay, and Steve, then, you provided us,
Well, can I just ask one follow-up question on that?
Oh, go
What was the
ahead.
date of that?
It was March 28, 2022.
right?
Okay. So, Ed, I don't know if you have that. Are you also,
I'm good for right now, yep.
you have anything? Ed?
Well, on the flagpole, we only got 2 poles out there. One, we have the American flag with the POW MIA flag underneath it. And on the other pole is the state flag. There's only 2 poles. Where would you put it? Where would it be put? You're certainly not gonna have three flags on one pole. If there was a 3rd pole, it might make sense.
Well, how do the other towns do it then?
So,
I thought you could attach multiple flags, no?
that I'm not sure what the
But I do
rules
know other flags are put on the pole, they just order them differently.
Yeah,
So
that's what I
pulled
thought.
a couple of flag policies from surrounding communities and
Thank
how
you.
they establish this, and so there are certain parameters, and they will list out which ones go first. And then they also detail in particular communities what flag posts they can be on, so there's multiple locations. I believe we also have a flag post down at the town square and then over at the South Fire Station and then there's another that's in the middle on one of those islands that I can't think of where. But so we would want to take that into consideration if the board was to consider moving forward, is to enacting a flag policy to go back towards what we were initially talking about with town council earlier about the First Amendment, and making sure that we're
Okay.
being representative, that this is not a way to encourage free speech, but government speech, so that it is protected. So that is one of the recommendations, is that the board would like to move forward, is that as part of such vote, we also enact a flag policy so that we can make sure that we do things appropriately and identify a process, in which case any future request would go through
Right.
that same process.
That makes sense to me. I like that idea, because I would think you'd want the main flagpole here to be the host for any other representative flags that we display. But we can't display, 3 more flags probably in the same month, without being like a little bit ridiculous, right?
But without a policy, you wouldn't be able to say no.
Well, and
Correct. That's what
that's
I'm
where,
saying. Yeah, so I think we need to have that draft policy. I mean, generally, I'm in favor of this. I feel like our community should be unafraid to show that it is inclusive, that we welcome people.
Very well put, yep.
Yeah, that we welcome people. We are inclusive. I think we are. I think most people feel we are. But I want to make sure that, because I know there's even been back and forth within the town on the lowering of flags, right? So it seems like if we want to keep things clear and clean, the first step would be to vote the flag policy. And I would assume the request that we get to hang a flag for any other purpose would be for the main flagpole, that we would limit it to the main flagpole.
yeah, I think that's dependent. And-
Okay, yeah.
And so the
Right.
reason I asked about the date was because in 2022, on May 2nd, the Supreme Court issued a unanimous decision about this topic. It was actually the Shirtliff
Right.
City of Boston
Yeah.
case, where they basically said, if you allow one, you have to allow all. So if you allow one flag to be flown, then if someone comes in with a flag that maybe is more offensive or you have an issue with, you have to allow it. So the ways to mitigate that are by either not allowing it at all, or having a well-written policy that supports what you will do. So we don't have that today, so we can't approve it, because once we approve it without
Right.
a policy, we have to approve every request that comes in.
But which flags are flown right now? We have the American flag, the state flag, and the POW
Those
and
ones
MIA
are all
flag.
allowed by statute, but if there's any third-party, non-government entity that wants to fly a flag, once you allow one, that's what this court case handled. Once you allow one, you have to allow.
Right, and
The
if we're-
POW MIA flag is state statute?
It is approved, yep, it is approved by statute. I'm not sure if it's state or federal, but I think that was covered in here.
But again,
It's both.
I'm in favor. I'm just saying that
Same.
we should have a policy, so that if we say, okay, during June, we're going to fly the pride flag, then I would hope we can say we're only going to fly one extra flag a month. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that would be.
To
efficient
keep
for-
it reasonable, so that we're not like, you know what I'm saying? Because you just never know. I don't know all the other occasions or reasons why someone might have a flag in the month of June. I don't know of them all, but I would think that, if we decide if we make a flag policy, the policies will lay that out. Is that correct, Rebecca? I'm not looking at the policies.
There's one of the ones that was, I thought was well-written was Westboro.
Okay,
And so they go through and, there's a bunch of stuff, but it says specifically that no other flag shall be flown on the town-owned flagpoles, as those flagpoles in this policy are not intended to serve or create a forum for private expression. But those allowed are the following: the Massachusetts state flag, the POW MIA flag, the fire department flag, the police department flag, the town flag, the public school flag, or Progress Pride flag flown during the month of June. And those are all allowed in the policy and dictated under the policy, but it's very
Okay.
clear that, again, it is not to create a forum for private expression.
okay, so they're not going to have any more flags coming into play. But
That's
this,
ultimately-
the pride flag is an acknowledged flag. Okay, I understand.
At
That
least
makes
that's
sense.
what they did in Westboro. And
Okay.
I've seen that done in some other communities as well, where they list it as an approved flag to be flown for the month of June in the
Okay.
flag policy itself.
Okay, so what we would need on our agenda for the next meeting is a flag policy for us to vote, because we don't have that. Even though Rebecca's looking at it, the members have not received that as part of their packet.
So I think what I would suggest, or what I'll do, is I'll make a motion to table this pending us adopting a flag policy.
Yep, I would agree with that.
Second.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I'll have something drafted for you for your July 8th meeting. July 6th.
Oh, let me get, I got you. Becky. Hello? Hello? Oh, there she is. She was running the veto, no, just kidding. She had that veto out in the front yard.
Thank you, Steve. So up next, we have the water treatment facility project. So this is to review and discuss the site plan review and stormwater management, land disturbance permit application, and consideration of comments for submission to the planning board regarding the proposed project. So the town administrator has provided a presentation of the proposed project. And I didn't have any
This was
notes
a
there.
presentation given to the Conservation Commission. I
Okay.
just thought it was, they haven't yet presented to the planning board, and I thought that the way that they had put everything into the slides was a lot more understandable than it would be if you just looked at a very detailed 300-page application.
Thank you.
Huge
The
document.
Cliff's Notes, yes.
Yeah.
So, so the intention of this is nothing to vote on, is that correct? So this is,
Unless the board would like to submit collectively comments to the planning board
Okay.
about the application before them, which is for the site plan review and stormwater management and land disturbance permit.
okay. All right, go ahead, Steve.
I just had one question. I know that there were some recent changes to the dates for compliance based on some new EPA regulations. Do we know if that impacts our timeline at all? I think it went out from 2029 to 2032, if I remember right. They changed it for certain chemicals, so I don't know if that's been discussed with the Water Commission or if that's come up in their meetings.
No, I couldn't answer that, I'm not certain. I just know that regardless, the intention to move forward with the water treatment facility, whether it be meeting the regulations or meeting the fact that we have those natural manganese and other issues that are going to continually present itself, that's the direction that the commission has taken. But to the actual specifics, I can't answer that.
Yeah, and the only reason I was asking is because I wasn't sure if that date change would impact any of the funding at all.
I believe that they've secured a separate round of funding through the state drinking water program. So they don't get all of the money up front, so they have to
Gotcha.
apply in phases.
That's all I have for now.
Okay. Kathy, I know you were going through it quite a bit.
I did.
Do you want me to go to Ed first, or?
Yeah, I don't mind, just,
Okay.
I went through the rather large document. And I did meet with the town administrator just before the meeting because I wanted to make sure I understood what our role was here tonight, which is to look at this and to see, do we have questions or concerns that we'd like to collectively forward to the planning board? And the one that I keep coming back to, because I cannot answer this question when people ask me about it, is why we are building it in such close proximity to the river, to the flood zone. And I think that's a very worthy question. I think that we're remiss as a board if we don't forward that to the planning board so that it becomes publicly discussed. I think there are answers and reasons, but I don't have them before me now, and they're not in this report. The second thing I asked about, and I couldn't find the section of the report because it is voluminous, but there was somewhere a disclaimer where I guess it's an engineering firm, seemed to say that they're not really responsible for anything that's different from this report. And I'm like, Okay, well, wait a minute. At what point do we have some degree of certainty as to the cost of this project? Because I think within this larger report, it's around, am I wrong, is it around 30 million or so they're projecting? 29 million, something like that, when they added it all up in the big report?
In their project estimate,
Yeah, yes, I believe it was, is it like 29? It's less than the 45 that we voted, right?
it is under, yes.
Okay.
Right now, it's coming in under.
I know, okay, and then it was explained to me that it also includes the water mains as
Correct.
well, not just this plant, the water mains. So, my question is more about the placement of it. I know we need this thing. I know the longer that we push it off, probably the more it costs. So it was on page 10, I think, I found that estimate of 29, just basically 30 million, just under 30 million. Okay. But this is not part of the site plan approval, so I guess we don't comment on that to the planning board. No.
You could make a comment, but it's not under the planning board's jurisdiction to alter the location of the site. They're only there to review the site as it's presented to them as part of the application.
Okay.
We could forward and have a discussion at an alternative date to ask the Water and Sewer Commission to potentially reconsider their location, if that's what you want to do, but the request right now is specific to the
Right.
application.
Because, I mean, it goes on to say the project is located within an environmentally sensitive area. And I just wonder if we have another area that would be not as sensitive and also not in the floodplain, right? Because insurance-wise, I would think that's going to cost us on an ongoing basis in our water rates, right? The building would have to be insured if it's in a floodplain.
It would, all of it would go through the floodplain administrator, which is the building commissioner. So if you have specific questions about the floodplain itself.
Well, I'm
you'd be the
asking
one to
about
issue the permit that
the,
would be
on
associated with such.
the, when you build the building, the town will have to insure it. The water rates will collect the cost of that insurance. Do we know, compared to putting it in a place that is not a floodplain, what is the insurance cost of putting up to $45 million building in a floodplain? Because that's a forever cost. That's a forever cost. So those are my questions, my concerns. It's mainly focused at this point on the placement of the building. And I don't know if the board feels as I do.
Ed, did you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, looking at the map, you have a well one water main, sheet C1. There's a notation, a road to well one. Is the intent to build a road where this dotted line is here?
No, it would be to lay the pipe under the existing road and repave the roadway.
Okay, so they have to do a lot of excavation.
They would have to do excavation,
So
yes.
So they're gonna, I mean, it's hard to tell on some of these maps where they're running with it. So they're actually gonna, from well one, they're gonna run right down through Groveland Square to, no, obviously not, because that's in the other one. That's in the, you can see the excavation there, but what's this, is this along the river line? This road to well one on again, on that sheet C-1.
C-1.
C-1,
23.
it says road to well one. And then it looks like it runs right out along the river. Is that, am I looking at that correctly?
That's the road down into the Pines.
Okay.
That's Main Street right there,
I see Main Street.
and that would be the sign right there through the survey and comes around, so that would be the roadway into the Pines Recreation Area, I believe.
So that, and it looks like on the left of that, that map, that looks like where the plant is. That,
Over there.
Down in the left corner.
yeah.
Yep.
So go down Main Street and along through the pines somehow. So they have to dig up Main Street?
There'd be portions of work on Main Street, correct? And that's where you see the side on C2, the Merrimack River.
Yep.
And you'll see Pecker Lane that's over there, so it's going all the way up Main Street. So from the Pines Recreation Area on 113 through the lights all the way up Main Street.
And I know it's not in here, but what is the proposed increase in the water rates? That, no idea. Nobody's,
I do not have that information. I am not on the Water Commission, so I would not have that. We would need to invite the Water Commission, or you'd have to have the Water Superintendent in to answer those questions.
it seems like that would be something that should have been answered before.
So the comments needed are for the project as presented. And is this something required for this meeting?
So it's
For
just, I mean,
debate.
for the reason that it was on your agenda is, you know, as it was a goal of the board, not just this year, but prior years, is to be informed about development
Yeah.
and subdivisions, et cetera, that are happening in town. So when we go through the process from the planning board's perspective or the zoning board, we send out department comments to all of the departments. So we ask highway, we ask Board of Health, we ask electric, water and sewer, what's happening, you know, is there an impact? Do you have any comments that will
Yep.
go back to the planning board? And then the planning board, when they issue their decision, will have conditions, so they'll take into consideration, the electric light says that you need to get a transformer, there's a really long lead time, you need to order this by X. Or the highway department says that you're gonna need a trench permit, and you're also gonna need to pave X because we just did this amount of paving on this date. And so as part of that process, the select board was included, so that if the select board had any comments,
Okay.
they would also be able to say, you know, from a community perspective, the interruption is going to be problematic, where they're ripping up a roadway in the Pines, is that gonna be problematic for field usage? Do you wanna condition construction activity? Do you wanna have any input in regards to the conditions that would be a part of the decision that they would render to the applicant and therefore become binding for them to adhere to? So for this particular conversation, it was more so the impact or any other issues that the select board deemed relevant to have noted by the planning board, and if necessary, conditioned as part of their permit.
Okay.
But if the board would like to have a more robust conversation with the water superintendent about rates, their plans, where they are in the process, who their OPM is, what they're doing, then we should certainly invite them in and have that conversation. But I am not knowledgeable enough in what's happening there to answer those
Right.
questions, and it was not the intent of me asking for it to be on the agenda.
Right, this is because they've chosen this site and they need the planning board to approve this site.
Approve the permits associated with the site, which is a land disturbance permit and a site plan approval.
Okay. And so, the notice of intent for it was with the Conservation Commission is still undecided, and the environmental review from the Massachusetts State Agency and Endangered Species and all that, still under review.
Correct.
Okay, and so, again, I get back to my concern, we're putting it in I believe, the floodplain, right? We're putting it in the floodplain. I was here when the river came up. So I now understand that the river floods. Doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen. And I guess I'm thinking, can't we move it out of the floodplain and build it somewhere still close to the wells, but not in the floodplain? And maybe then it wouldn't be as sensitive an environmental area either, because I'm guessing that all of that is kind of tied together to the river. One and all. And I'm just thinking, I know people like to have their homes on the river, and then you deal with it. But I don't know that we need our water treatment plant to be riverfront, if it doesn't have to be. And if there's another viable location, the plans would be the same for the building, right? The building design would be the same.
I don't think so.
No, well, the building design would be the same. The changes to the water mains, still similar. It's just a matter of where you're hooking up from.
But I think and I'm just going off of my recollection of watching the water meeting where they went through this presentation, I think there's certain things that they put into the building design to account for where it is, and so it would change if it was in other locations. But I also think they talked about, like, they looked at, I think it was 3 locations.
Yep.
And the other 2 either had, like, conservation restrictions on them or weren't viable for other reasons. So I think that's why they ultimately went to that one. Again, I'm just going from memory at the meeting, but I think there was a number of things they brought up around why that was the kind of, I hate to say only choice, because there's always other choices, but it seemed like they were making it pretty clear that that was the only viable choice in town.
I don't know. I've gotten concerns from residents that I think are well-informed, and I can't answer those concerns, and that's why I was hoping the board would be willing to vote to forward to the planning board the concern about why is this being built in the floodplain?
When is the planning board meeting on this?
You know, because I mean,
I believe
that's an
they're
important
meeting
site
the first week of
consideration.
July.
if they can answer that and explain it and make some.
But the planning board wouldn't have that decision.
Okay, but
They
I
wouldn't
mean,
have the purview to change the location. But if
Okay.
you want to say something to the water commission, then the board can collectively vote and say that they would like the water commission to reconsider the location. But the planning board doesn't have the regulatory ability to say that they cannot put it where they're looking to build
but
it.
you said we can vote to send a concern, or,
If you're looking at the location itself and you would like them to consider a different location, then you can certainly vote to send a letter to the water commission and advise them to do, that is the purview of the board and you would like them to do so. If you wouldn't be able to send that to the planning board. The planning board cannot alter and/or tell them they cannot build where they're looking to build. That's not part of their jurisdiction. They don't have the authority to do so.
right, but they can turn the site down.
They can't deny a permit because they don't like the location. No different than all of the subdivisions in Groveland exist because they cannot legally deny something that meets the regulations and the zoning. So
Okay, but-
from a planning perspective, they don't have an ability to deny an application that meets its standard, just because they don't like it. Just like a 40B comes
No,
in.
no, no, what I'm asking is, we were asked to review this plan and this site to provide commentary, I thought, to the planning board, if the board so chooses.
Correct. In regards to the application itself, with the site, if you want to say that you don't like the site, they'll take that under advisement, but they can't do anything with it. So if you want your opinion to be heard, then you need to go to the water commission, because the planning board's going to be like, noted, they don't want it there.
But-
And then they can't do anything about it. But the water commission can have that conversation with you and potentially explore other opportunities. But the planning board cannot change that. They cannot dictate that they change the location based upon the floodplain.
I know, but I'm asking for clarification. I thought the planning board meeting is already scheduled to vote on this site, right?
Vote on the application.
Yes, vote on the application, which
So
includes the
a public
site.
hearing has been advertised for a site plan approval and a stormwater management and land disturbance application for a water treatment facility to be constructed at that location. Just as we
Okay.
heard from town council this evening, they will open the public hearing and they will read the notice. And the notice is for an application for a site plan approval and stormwater management permit over behind 183 rear Main Street. It's
Okay.
not to review other locations. or
No, no,
to
no,
consider other
I'm not asking for that, but I thought that we were supposed to, if we so wished, to make a vote to raise a concern about this application? Yes or no?
The application before you with the site. So if you want to state that you would like them to change it, you can do that. But again, they don't have the ability.
No, they don't have the ability, but they would get that from this board. They would hear that the select board had a concern about the site.
Correct, you could do that, but they legally have no ability to do anything to help you if you wanted them to change
I
it.
understand that.
Okay.
Okay. But they still have to wait on the site review to hear from the other agencies. Is that correct?
They would hear from all the other departments as well as the public and abutters.
No, I'm talking about the state agency and the conservation, all the
So
all
they
the
wouldn't
things.
take into consideration what the Concom approval, just as much as the Concom wouldn't take into a site plan approval. They're two separate regulatory
Okay,
agencies,
okay.
which is why it's getting a little complicated, because we're gonna have a general conversation, the Water Commission and the superintendent is the way to go. But from a regulatory standpoint, Concom can't vote on planning, planning can't vote on Concom, zoning can't vote on planning. Everyone by statute has a very specific area that they're focused on. They can comment in general, but if you want your comments to have impact,
Yeah.
I think it should be with the people who have the ability to change it, not the people who can say noted, but we're only reviewing A. That's all I was saying. But if you would like to make a collective comment, it really doesn't matter. Then you're more than welcome to make a collective comment to the planning board that you would like the location to be altered based upon the floodplain and your concerns about the current site.
Okay. I thank you. I know it's so much more complex than it's not easy to explain to residents. But I think that when all is said and done, it is all tied together. When you ask, well, how high will my water rates go? Well, that depends, right? How much will it cost to build the plant? How much pipe will we have to lay? How much insurance will we have to carry on the plant? All of this matters. Of course it matters. And you're right, the planning board's not going to review that kind of thing. But we've been hearing from residents since this was voted, I believe. And I've been to at least the hearing on the rates, and I know that there was a lot of commentary about not setting a rate that you keep changing. You know, I mean, don't keep changing. But then they also presented that they didn't want to make one big rate change and shock everybody. So I believe they were looking at something that had like steps in it, 5-year steps. I recall 20% increases. But then I've also heard there a flat fee of, was it $50 somewhere thrown around somewhere? Yep, okay, you're nodding. Finance board, thank you. Numbers I can remember, names not so good. So I guess I feel like it is important for us to stay involved and to raise concerns and questions if we feel it's important. If you don't feel it's important as a board to send any commentary to the planning board, I guess we don't have to, but I feel like the absence of commentary almost seems like we think everything's just great. And I know we need to do this plan. I'm not against it. Let me be right out there with you. I think that we do need to do this for the future generations in this town, because even if they might raise the level that you can have of the PFAS, there'll be something else. And we don't have the ability to treat our water right now. We don't have that ability. And I know they looked into buying water from Haverhill, and that was much more expensive. And I think our water department has done a fantastic job to date, and I think they will continue to do so, but I am concerned about the site placement, I guess, overall. That's my biggest concern right now.
So in slides 20 and 21, that's where it talks about that flood elevation compliance, and it says it exceeds the requirement by 3.3 feet. Not a lot of wiggle room.
That should just do it. But again, I guess I'm wondering, you know, we have land up here. Maybe we don't like the look of that building right up here, but we have land up here. The town owns land. We own the land where the living land, where the housing authority has their buildings. We own that land. I just would feel that I hadn't fully done my job presenting and representing resident concerns if I didn't raise the issue. about where it's being placed.
Hi, did you want to speak? Give us your name and
Yes,
address.
good evening. Brian Canzaro, 27 Groveland Commons. Just for a matter of transparency, I sit on the Finance Board and the Zoning Board of Appeals, but I come before you as a ratepayer for the water and sewer and as an individual, so I want to get that out there. To go back to Selectwoman Castronellis's concern, the imagery that came up on the chart, the cross-section of the building, about the 3.3 feet of elevation, that was based upon a federal standard of where you could put a building in a floodplain. It's supposed to be 3 feet above the maximum 100-foot plane for that area. TEC, which is the engineering company that's doing the work, just by how the sheer fact the math worked out, they were able to elevate the building up an additional 3.3 feet. So we're about 6 feet above the floodplain. According to them, there should be no problem with any sort of flood issues. As how that pertains to the insurance, that's a good question that someone should need to ask, and that would come from the Water and Sewer Department, I would think, because ultimately, they're the ones that get assessed the insurance, and they're the ones that charge it back to the ratepayer. I don't believe the town pays the insurance policy. I believe the ratepayers pay for that, but that's a question that we can ask of them. As far as the other locations that have been asked about, the other two locations are functionally not the best choices because due to the infrastructure costs, and just because they're in vicinity of other homes, people can see things of that nature, they felt the location they picked down on the Pines was the best because it's more hidden, it's out of the way. I can tell you, one of them, I forget if it was Site 1 on the plan that they had, the biggest concern from the superintendent of the water department is the heavy trucking that was coming in would be going down a residential street, basically one width wide, 18 wheels going in and out. So, little things like that came up as to their decisions as to why this particular site made the best place to put it from that. Just from the maintenance of the running the building and everything, it just works better to be where it is. So I think that's why they put it, but again, you would need for them to tell you that. As far as putting it elsewhere, I can only tell you there has been rumors running around, and I know one of the select board members had mentioned the property behind here. That's going to be a major problem, because I can tell you that local residents don't want it there. They still have it in their head that that's where they want their senior center. And I would agree with that wholeheartedly, because I don't want to be looking out my back window and seeing a big blank building back there. It doesn't make any sense. It functionally makes sense to be down where it's going to be down in the Pines. I think it'll be safe. I know some people have concerns about environmental impact and everything, and the only really question I would have outside of this purview, because I know you can't answer it, is that under most circumstances, the municipal need has a tendency to outweigh the needs of other aspects of building things in towns around. Outside of us actually killing a salamander or a tortoise or a turtle or whatever, I'm not sure how much power the Conservation Commission really has in determining as to whether the building can exist there or not, because it's a matter of public use. That, you got to weigh the both.
And
You got to weigh both.
That's their jurisdiction.
That's
so
correct.
we'll leave it
That's
with-
correct.
Yes.
But outside of that, I hope I was able to explain that to you as far as the numbers and the differences and as far as the insurance. That's a question you need to ask of them. But I think ultimately, as a community, I think it's really the best spot to put it in. It's out of the way. It functionally makes more sense because I believe that's well 3. It's right there. The other wells are in a situation where just because they're either upstream and downstream, it requires more infrastructure to move the water through the system, more pumps and more this. So you're going to pay for it one way or the other.
May I ask
So,
him a
thank you.
question?
Sure, yeah.
Do you mind if I ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you think there's any other towns that have built this kind of a facility in a floodplain?
I'm sure they have, but I don't know that for sure. I can't answer that.
I'll look into that.
But I'm pretty confident that, out of all the areas that they would build into, if they had to build into a sensitive area like that, I'm sure that there's checks and balances. The state makes sure of that. We live in the state of Massachusetts. There's a lot of checks and balances, so I'm sure they make sure of that. But I'm not saying to say yes to it, but I'm just saying is from the perspective of the Water and Sewer Commission, they're the ones that determine where the building goes as far as what I've been told, and that's the position and the,
Right, but we've
once
also
they
had
took
some turnover and we have new people. I mean, I just think that enough residents have raised this concern. And I know the building is not what you call beautiful and sightly and all that, but it's necessary. And the town owns certain property. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't at least bring this question up at this juncture. Before the plan just goes rolling forward, because it is being asked by our residents. Our residents are questioning why you're putting a almost $45 million plant down in a floodplain.
well, that's
And I
a
can't
legitimate
answer it.
question. I agree.
I can't answer it. I can't say why this would be the smartest move, so that's why I bring it forward.
Yeah, no, as the town administrator says, and I agree with her because I've been watching all the meetings myself, those are questions that must come from the Water and Sewer Commission, whether it's the commissioners themselves or the superintendent, because they ultimately are the ones that are making the decisions and the determinations. So, but thank you for your time. Thank you.
Yep,
so
and Thank
much.
you for your comment.
So, based on this, I mean, it just sounds like going to the Water and Sewer Department is the best path. It's the one that's going to have the most impact, rather than going to planning and ask these questions, right? You bring up the insurance and things like that.
Right, but I think that if we're asked for commentary on the plan, the fact that it's in a floodplain is a concern, that's all.
Okay.
That's my only,
Just both-
that's my
cover both
commentary. Yeah, I
ways.
mean, I know they can't change anything, but it's a concern. Yep.
Would it make sense to bring water and sewer in here, or do you want a separate comment delivered to them specifically on this?
I don't, what does the rest of the board feel? I don't want to tie up the water and sewer for just my questions. I can go to their meeting if I need to. If the rest of the board thinks this is just great, fine.
And then, so,
We got the questions, we should bring the water department in and ask them the questions.
yeah, I mean, I think a deeper explanation of how the site was chosen is good. I don't necessarily want to tell them go back to the or suggest to them that they go back to the drawing board and look at other sites. I know a ton of work went into this. It may just be a case that we don't understand it, so I would be happy to have them in, or, you know, if they would be willing, or, you know, ask for some additional information about, you know, why this site is the
Well,
most viable / only viable site. But I don't want to ask them to, I think they're too far down the path for us to come in and say, hey, you gotta pick another site. I mean,
then it's a waste of my time. I mean, I'm not going to waste time. If this is not still open for discussion at all, then, you know, you're going to build it in the floodplain on 6 feet up and hope that that works. I mean, that's the decision and there's no going back. That's my question. Maybe instead of inviting them in, the question should be asked of the water and sewer. Would you consider another site? Because I do not think the town has selected a site for its Council on Aging Center. That has not been selected. It was voted down. Okay, so that's not the future site of a Council on Aging building. There's no proposal. Nobody said that. Nobody voted that. That's just been chatter. And part of that chatter was a way to say, this is why we got to build it here, in my opinion. To some degree, sometimes the talk in town kind of leads down one way intentionally by saying, well, we're going to build our senior center there, so we can't put it there. But we voted that down. The town voted it down. They said no. So I don't know why we're still saying that's the site of our senior center. I mean, I voted for it, but it was a pretty overwhelming vote against it. I don't see that changing.
Did you?
So I guess I just want to get,
I guess the question is, it's more of a question for water and sewer. Is this site set in stone at this point? Everything seems to be draft, everything, I couldn't find the disclaimer within here that I read through, the big document. I went through the big one that said, well, we really can't guarantee anything in this document because it's all draft. And I'm like, great. So we don't really know how much we're spending. We know that we're going to put it up high because it's in near a flood zone. We think this is the best place for it. I went to the hearing on the rates. I guess maybe I missed it. If there was a hearing on site placement,
the others.
I maybe missed that. But I mean, so maybe did a lot of other people. It's easy in this town to miss out on things. The communication is, we don't have a newspaper, so you have to try and keep searching through things. But again, we keep getting commentary, or I do at least, I keep seeing the emails that the site is still a concern. If it's not a concern with the board at all, then that's fine. You guys don't have to ask the question. I can ask it by going to the meeting saying, is this site the only thing you'll consider now? It seems like it is, if it's gonna just go flying through the planning board.
Rebecca, is that, I know it's like somewhat out of the jurisdiction here, but are they pretty far into the process? Where this
In
is like,
terms of like a selection of location?
yeah, like this is it.
I mean, they're at 50% design, and
Okay.
they have an owner project manager who's
Yep.
reviewing. So, I mean, they're pretty heavily invested with
Okay.
the location as it is.
Okay.
But, I mean, of course, it's within the board's purview to take a position if the board would like to take a position, and if the board would collectively like to vote to take a position, then you're more than, I mean, that's your purview. You
Right.
should do that if that's what you want to do.
Right.
But to answer your question, I mean, they're fairly into
They're in it, yeah.
and invested in that particular location as of date.
And I share your concern. I mean, I lived in Florida, and there was no way that 5 hurricanes would hit my house in 1 year, 2004. It did.
But they did.
Things happen. So I think it's more, I don't want to derail anything, right? That's not the point.
No, I'm
but
not
to-
trying to derail.
to
I'm
share a
actually just,
concern.
trying to represent residents
Yes.
that are asking, and I cannot honestly give them a good answer
Mm-hmm.
because the answer that that's where the senior center is going to go is not valid
Right.
in my mind.
Yep.
Because there's no vote that secures that property for a senior center by this town.
So I guess it's just a matter of what appropriate communication channel do we want to go through?
So I don't know, is everybody, you're familiar with where the senior center was going to go? Okay. So that piece of land is town-owned. It's not that far from the well. But again, if it's too far along, it's too far along. I guess maybe that's the question. Ask the water and sewer superintendent if we're too far along.
And if we're,
I mean, I don't want to add to the expenses, that's for sure.
right.
But I do think it's a difficult question to answer. I can't answer residents who ask me, why are you building it in the floodplain
Right.
instead of around the town facilities here?
Yep.
I don't know.
So I think I'm perfectly okay with asking them if it's too far along to move. I think
Okay. Yeah.
I think the follow-up question is, if yes, then what I would like to see from them is just a detailed explanation of why that location was the only viable location. Because that would help us with the.
That would help us with response to residents. Yes, I agree.
If
Sometimes
no, then it's a different conversation, but it sounds like
No,
we are
but-
too far along.
being able to answer a
Yep.
question to a resident is important,
Agreed.
I think.
Yeah.
So maybe we should vote to ask how far along, are we so far along that we cannot consider an alternate? And if so, why is this the best viable site?
I'd second that motion.
Okay,
Okay.
so moved.
Any further discussion? No? All in favor? 4 in favor, 1 absent. And to be clear, it's not that we're in support of this. We just want to make sure it is transparent, I guess, and alleviate concerns.
Right.
So as far as planning board comments,
I guess we don't have one at this point if it's not anything they can consider, but should they be informed that can we copy them on our communication to the, yeah, if we can copy them, I think that would be a courtesy.
So I do have one concern for the
Oh, okay, then go ahead.
And
bring
it
up.
goes back to something that the town administrator was saying. I want to make sure they're factoring in the disruptions to the pines for the,
Can
that's
yeah.
my biggest concern. Because there's a lot, especially, you know, if you look at, over the course of 12 months, there's a lot that takes place down there. And so we need to understand how, if that is the location, the determined location, what that impact is going to be, you know, and how it can be mitigated. I'm not saying they have to, you know, only dig up the road in the winter, but we
They
need
can
to
only
understand.
work in the winter.
We need
That's
to
the
understand that.
clear answer. January, February, then you have to stop.
no,
We
I
can
agree with that.
consider, if it were to move forward and the planning board were to issue an approval, et cetera, we could work on language that we could potentially bring back to the select board as you do oversee that particular area, the pines usage, et cetera, to see if that works for the board, and that the planning board would consider including that as a condition of their permit. And that would, again, like we said, they would have to provide us maybe a construction schedule that would need to be approved by the select board on the areas that were, you know, that involved the impact to the field during the spring or the summer or the fall or what have you.
Well, I think it also goes a little beyond that in my mind. Like, what are the safety measures, right? Because you have kids down there, so if there's going to be open holes in the road, like, how are we, like, all of that should be considered as part of the planning board application.
General construction standards in addition to that, correct.
Right.
We can definitely work with that. Even when we were doing over at the Pines, the parking lot, trying to take into consideration the field use and making sure that it was secured and there was a fence and that it couldn't be moved. So there's a lot of different things, and we can bring that all back to the board just so that you're aware of what is being proposed, and if you have any additional comments, we can make sure that they try and take those into consideration. And that's part of the whole site
Right.
plan approval, like you're approving the site, you're approving the construction aspect.
No, there's not another access, like the road that was built next to the cemetery has a back road off of it, but that doesn't go all the way down, right?
The trail, there's a trail that
It's
goes
just a-
back there.
But I thought the vehicles could go on it, no?
I'm not sure it's wide enough for.
I thought that was one of the, I don't know, what do you call it, conditions or whatever. Well, look who's here. He's got
Well,
a
well,
share
well.
too. Yeah, so I wondered about that when Ed was raising the point about the roadway, but it doesn't probably go that far,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I'd have to take a look. I'm not sure. I can see it when I look at the trail, like an aerial view.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like it could do a vehicle, maybe like a 4x4 or something
Right,
like that.
Yeah.
But I don't think it'd be like an
That's
actual
probably it.
truck or vehicle.
No,
Okay, all right.
Fiat.
So then just the disruption to the
Yep.
recreation fields and use.
Yes.
Yep, do we need to vote that?
Probably.
Make the
Yeah.
motion.
So I'll make a motion that we ask the planning board to consider the recreational impacts to the pines as well as safety as part of the site plan approval process.
I'll second that.
All right, any further discussion? No? Okay, all in favor? 4 in favor and 1 absent.
Yep.
All right, next up on the agenda are community engagement analytics. So this is a quarterly update and review of community engagement metrics and outreach activities. The town administrator has provided a presentation of the analytics. So Rebecca, I was hoping you could just quickly go through them, if that's all right? Okay, great, thank you.
There it is.
I did like how this was laid out compared to your previous ones.
What was that?
I like how this is laid out compared to the previous ones. Yeah.
I tried to make some changes.
Yes, yeah, I see it.
All right, so for Facebook, we saw some significant increases to our numbers. A lot of that had to do with the fact that we've also taken a lot of time to start doing a lot more posting. So if you'll see the activity, not just because of trash, that's the other reason why it's been increasing, but we've also been trying to make other posts, like, making sure that people know that the 2026 census is due, and, that there's a summer camp, and just making sure that we're posting a lot more.
Yep.
And we're finding that there's a lot more engagement, and the data supports that. The top performing post, which is always interesting, is the police activity on Main Street, which generated 20,224 views.
Well, that was when they found the old relics, yes.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
So again, from the comparative analytics from January until June, you'll see again that there was a really big jump from April to June. Again, that's because of all of the posting, I think, that we've been doing, making sure people know the town meeting, where the warrants posted, all of that is taken into consideration. You'll see a slight increase in our non-follower reach. The Groveland audience is had dropped a little bit. The net follower growth was only 50 compared to our 57 in February to April. Reactions, we had 389 reactions, which was, again, more than we'd had in prior months. Comments, 160. Again, there were more posts for people to comment on. And
Wow.
again, take into consideration the trash and the cart rollout, that generated a lot of input, a lot of which we did not typically see. So you'll see the total engagements has increased from 310 to 620.
I ask, if somebody is following the town, this is the town Facebook, right? Do they get a notification automatically when there's a new post, or do they have to play with their,
So it would generate on their news feed.
okay,
So if they follow, and then if they had an individual that they were friends with or that they were connected with somehow, if they commented on it, it would get prioritized in their news feed, so it kind of
okay.
generates interest like that.
okay. That's,
So for key
Yeah.
trends, just as we talked about, we generated a lot more views this current reporting period for the reasons that we had just talked about. So we are continuing to expand beyond our followers, which is really promising. So we're broadening our horizons with the messages that we're trying to get out into the public. You'll see that the total engagement increased from 310 interactions to 620 interactions. And also the comments had increased substantially as well. So we're finding that, as we had discussed in prior meetings, that Facebook tends to be our most successful platform and way to engage with residents and to push information out into the community. Again, in comparison to Instagram and the website.
Yep.
For Instagram, the data has changed a little bit and decreased slightly. Total interactions were 146. Again, the top performing content was, again, the police activity. As we had mentioned, we had a really big kickoff in January and February where we had a lot of views going on. We dropped substantially in half in the last 90 days. The unique accounts reached had increased from 346. We also saw some increase in the views from followers, so they're viewing our content more, but again, it's the same people viewing the information. It's not anybody new. So we just kind of recap that a little bit. So it's not really reaching as many folks as we had talked about. The engagement is really with the current existing followers, so it's not really spreading out much, but it continues to be a good way to communicate with those residents who are using that platform to view data. For the website, we had active users from 9,700. We had a total page views of 38,000, and our duration slightly increased from last month. Again, we're attributing that mostly to the cart and the trash discussion. As you can see in the most visited pages, the trash and recycling was the top winner there. Employment opportunities, the pay online, which is usually pretty steady. Again, the upcoming trash and recycling program, and then the elections and voting, which ties into the nomination papers and things like that. Like we just discussed for the comparative analytics, we have the increase with the active users, increase in total page views during average session duration, The Google organic search, so people are going into Google and searching for our website, and they're getting directed to our website, which is a good sign, which means that it pops up as one of the first things. Direct traffic is a little low compared to what it was last month, and Facebook referrals is up by 1,162. But again, that just goes back and attributes to the fact that you're looking at something on Facebook, and then you're clicking on a link, and it's directing you to our website. So we're getting the most interaction from Facebook and our website. So if you don't get enough information on the Facebook page, they're going to the website, which is absolutely phenomenal, and that's exactly what we want.
Okay, good.
So we just kind of went through all of the key trends there. For department engagement, for the town clerk, everything seems to be pretty steady. The nomination papers, there was an uptick, of course, like we had talked about, in April and June versus February and April. There was also an uptick in birth certificates, and there was a decrease in death certificates, but overall, things remain pretty steady. For the Council on Aging, I just did a comparison between April and May, since that's kind of how they do their engagement report, because they report these numbers to the board that they go over during their monthly meetings. So their admin touch points are up, their community outreach is up, professional services is up, support services are down slightly, but total touch points is around the same as last month, a little lower. So the new active users, I thought, was the most telling as part of the metrics on this page, 15 from the 8 in April. So things, again, are trending in a positive direction, and people are utilizing the services and the programs, and it continues to be relevant in what older adults are looking for in the community. For highway, the number of online work order requests had decreased substantially. The phone calls had dropped slightly, as well as the walk-ins, which I thought was a little interesting, given the pavement management and the back and forth that we had gone through with a couple of the residents. So I'm not sure if they were not using the online work orders to report that, or if it just wasn't captured. But I do know that there is a lot more activity in that office, so the numbers seemed a little bit surprising to me. For treasurer collector, the biggest jump is the boat ramp inquiries as well as the tax inquiries, and part of that was due to the new portal with the online system and the billing, and how we're now using VADAR instead of going through City Hall systems. So there was a lot of questions and confusion about that.
Oh, okay.
For Board of Health, everything was pretty steady, even on the trash and recycling dipped a little bit, ironically, whereas it increased in other areas. Title V was a big uptick, but that's usually because of the seasonal work, so you'll start to see that. Inspectional services, permits are down slightly. Inspections down slightly, so those are a little alarming when we start to look into our revenue and what we're taking in for building permits and new growth and activity within the community. But it is getting to before the summer months, and hopefully that will start to increase again. But I think the biggest takeaway that I've heard from the building commissioner is that essentially, you know, with the uncertainty in the economy, not many people are investing and their monies into additions and upgrades and things like that. People are tending to save money, so without that additional investment, then we don't see that additional investment, again, with our new growth and permits and things like that. So we're just being cautious of that from a revenue perspective, but it is somewhat cyclical in nature. For the executive coordinator, there was an increase in phone calls, in-person visits, substantially resident contacts. All of the numbers were really up except for the business contacts, and those are usually referrals. And we did add a new category, being the trash and recycling at the bottom, so you'll see there was a lot more. And again, we like to note that the executive coordinator is the person who takes the calls directly, so the one that's transferring them to all the different departments. So usually people are, again, calling the main line and looking for a specific department instead of calling the department directly. We did update the voicemail based upon select member Baker's comment to include that you can fill out a work order online. We also did put it in Arthur's signature line as well. But again, most people will just call the general line and ask to get transferred.
Sure.
And there was also a lot more telemarketer calls, which is,
They're very frustrating, I know.
Telemarketer.
and that's all the updates for the community analytics. So I think that the most promising takeaway, like we discussed, is that Facebook and the website continue to be useful tools, and we need to find a way to be more creative with the Instagram and trying to get additional outreach. I think we continue to work on our social media pushes with our Canva flyers and making sure that people are getting the information that they need. I am also going to be releasing my newsletter again shortly, so that we'll have another way to engage with members, and we can track those who subscribe, and there'll also be a way to either link to our social media pages and link to the website, so it'll be interesting to see whether or not that has any impact as well. But I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody may have in regards to those figures.
For the Facebook post, I mean, it looks like I know it's a lot of work. I'm not good with social media, so I understand. Is this something that you and the executive coordinator both do? Okay, so you
Correct.
can divide and conquer. It's not just on you.
No, Andy
Okay.
plays a huge role into it. We'll brainstorm, and we usually try and come up with like a week's worth of posts that we're now trying to do, like what's going on, what's happening, what people might need, what might be interesting, what does a department need to push, or if there's information, how can we share, like the engagement symposium with the Council on Aging, working with them, trying to share that and get that information out.
Yeah.
So we try and be very strategic, but we do try and set like all right, on Monday, this is what we're going to post, and get that kind of out of the way so we don't have to, worry too much about it.
Yeah, nope, I understand. Any other questions or comments on the analytics?
No,
No?
I have no questions.
Okay,
I have
great.
two.
Yes.
Do we have, this is great, I like the format. Do we have any information related to the emergency alerts? I know we transitioned from one system to the other, as to like how many residents have signed up and how many times we've used that? And is that something we could track as part of this?
So I can get the information as to how many users have signed up. In regards to how much we've used it, I think that the department who even used the old system the most was the water and sewer. I don't think that the public safety and/or the town has really used it much. So I can probably, based upon that data, give you a better understanding of how many times we've used it since it's been implemented.
Sure.
But I can definitely get that as well as the list for you at the next meeting.
Yeah, it would just be interesting to see if we're, seeing that kind of, I don't know what the original code red numbers look like, but it would be interesting to see if we're seeing that trend upward now that it's, rolled out and people know about it and things like that.
That's a good question. All right. All good, Kathy?
Yep, I'm good.
Excellent. So next up, we have the Whittier Regional Agreement Amendment Committee. Review and discussion of the working draft regional agreement and potential feedback from the town.
Okay, so I do still need to recuse myself because tomorrow's my last day.
Okay.
Once I'm retired, just putting it out there, if this meeting were to consider it the next meeting, I could participate.
Excellent.
But for the time, I have to recuse myself.
Okay.
Should we hold this off until Jason is here?
Yeah, I was going to mention that this is another agenda item that I think will be discussed over multiple meetings. The town administrator did provide a working draft document. I know Jason was going to present this, but I wasn't sure if there was anything you could add to this, or should we just take this as a homework assignment to review it and be ready to discuss for the next meeting?
I think it would be best to take it as a homework assignment and go
Okay.
through it and see if you have any comments, concerns, edits, or anything that you would like to bring forward.
Okay.
And I appreciate you taking the time to start doing that, because we are going to get into a time frame where we're going to have a deadline as to whether or not we want to submit any comments
Okay.
before it goes back to the Whittier School Committee for their vote. And I would hate for us to miss the opportunity to provide any feedback from the town.
Okay.
It is a very lengthy document, and there's a lot of meat to it in terms of what we
Yes.
would like to see moving forward.
Okay.
But I will note, the only other thing in the actual packet itself, which is of interest, is that after the agreement, you will see as part of the Regional Agreement Amendment Committee, is that there was a straw poll that was taken about certain more controversial questions that were being considered, such as the capital apportionment, whether or not the committee, school committee members should be appointed by the school committee like they currently are, or whether or not they should be the chief elected officer. So you'll see as part of it that there's the vote and the answer from each of those communities, which again, I thought was really interesting. So when you do look at the agreement, you can also look at that sheet, because there's certain boxes that have discussion points that say, you know, do you want this to be a unanimous vote? Do you want this to be a 2/3 vote? What would your preference be? And it kind of leaves the language a little bit open-ended, if you will. But those are all things that we would need to be able to weigh in on so that we can draft a final report from the RAC committee that will then be presented again to the school committee for their vote and consideration.
Okay. Any questions for Rebecca while we have this?
Do they post minutes and/or recordings of these meetings?
Of the RAC meetings?
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
Can we get information on where to access
Yeah,
those?
I can send you all of them. I believe they're posted online, but I can definitely do that.
That would be good. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so we'll just leave this as a good homework assignment for the next meeting. And then Rebecca, you can keep us posted on that deadline, but it is a lot to review, so, and I do agree the polls toward the end of that section are really interesting, especially seeing how you can get in the heads of the different communities and where they're at, which I think is helpful to this process as well. Okay. Do we need to vote to table it, or was this a discussion?
I think we can just table it until the next meeting.
Okay, okay. All right.
Do you want me to grab Ken?
Yeah, do you mind? Appreciate it. There you are. All right, well, next we have up an establishment of an annual volunteer recognition program. So this is discussion and possible vote to establish an annual volunteer recognition program to coincide with the board's annual appointments process. This program would formally recognize and celebrate the contributions of residents serving on town boards, committees, and commissions. And you'll see my name is listed here because this was a thought that I had had. So basically, the purpose of this would to introduce the concept of a town volunteer program to more consistently acknowledge the contributions of our board, committees, and commissions. Because I don't know about you, but time seems to be going by pretty quickly. And I think to take a moment to pause to show recognition is important. So the idea is to increase visibility, appreciation, and engagement across the community. I think this could also increase more volunteerism if people feel appreciated and recognized. So some of the ideas I had was a proposed yearly recognition. So public recognition through town social media highlighting, which she already does, which is great, for volunteers in their contributions, and issuance of service milestone certificates. So maybe every 5 years, there's something that is signed by us and mailed to the volunteers. And all of this can be in coordination with our annual appointment cycle, so that would be around this time, to incorporate formal thank you acknowledgements. Another idea I had was ongoing meeting recognition. So potentially at each select board meeting, recognize one committee or commission by briefly describing its role and responsibilities, naming each member, offering a formal thank you for their service. So with this approach, we could recognize each committee approximately twice per year. And this was an idea given to me, which was super helpful. So I know I said it was mine, but this was inspired from feedback. Another piece is committee transparency and engagement. So invite a committee or commission chair to attend and provide a 5 to 10 minute overview, share their purpose, current priorities, and any key issues. It gives the board and the public better visibility into their work, and it creates an opportunity to identify topics for future discussion. And overall, just thinking about reinforcing appreciation, improved transparency, and strengthen communication between the select board and our other committees and commissions and the public. I know that was a lot. I should have had a slide ready to present, but I did not. So, yeah, yearly recognition, something that we can do in our meetings, and then inviting people in to speak on behalf of their committee or commission. So any thoughts on that? I'm going to start with you.
I'm fully on board for this. Yeah, I would make a motion that we do the establishment of an annual volunteer recognition program, and we can hammer out the details as we go. Yeah, I think that we always seem to recognize our volunteers after we lose them, you know, in one way or another. Sometimes, you know, sadly, and sometimes they just move. But then we say how much they contributed to the town. But along the way, I love the service milestones, you know. So I think that's a fantastic idea. I think it'll be easy to pass on from board to board. You know what I mean? As the board transitions, new members get on. It's not impossible to keep up with. 'Cause I think they've tried to do different things, and it's become difficult.
Yes.
This sounds reasonable. It sounds like we could easily do it and then get to know our volunteers a little better, too, as well. So I like it.
Excellent. Ed?
Yeah, not a bad idea. You know, you could also do something similar to what the Council on Aging does. They have like a get-together here towards the end of the year where they recognize the people that have volunteered with them. And they usually have a great amount of people that show up.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love that idea.
Yeah, I'm all for it. I think it's a fantastic idea. I think it is a good way to you know, recognize the contributions that people have. And also, I think you said something about like maybe having the chairs of particular boards come in. I think it's a great way to get information out, which is a big thing for me, is getting information about what different boards and committees do so that to generate interest. So I think that's a great idea as well.
Excellent.
Springing off of what Steve just said, could we use the department/committee update line, have it on the agenda?
I was thinking that, because
Yeah.
there hasn't been a lot of engagement with that, so if we
Right.
open it up.
Maybe
might
we
as
can just
well.
open it up to
Yeah.
department and board and committee
Right.
updates, yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. So what I can do is, I know I gave you a lot of information. I can have something a little bit more formalized. I just didn't want to lose sight of it while we're doing the appointments for fiscal year
Right,
2027.
so I'll make a motion that we establish an annual volunteer recognition program, the details of which will be voted on and presented at a future meeting. That's my motion.
Excellent.
I'll second it.
All right, any further discussion? None? All in favor? 4 in favor, 1 absent. Thank you, that was easy. Thank
That was
you.
easy.
So that brings us to appointments. So we have annual board, committee, commission, employment appointments. So this will be 2 separate motions. So the executive coordinator provided a list of individuals who submitted letters of interest to serve or to be reappointed, along with a list of vacant seats. There is 1 update submitted to fill a vacancy and with the Conservation Commission. So the suggested motion for the board, committee, and commission section would be move to appoint the individuals to the boards, committees, and commission for the terms outlined in the executive coordinator's memorandum dated June 22nd, 2026, and further appoint Jill Carr to the Conservation Commission for a 2-year term expiring June 30th, 2028. I have that here if someone actually wants to read the motion.
So moved.
Okay,
Yeah, that's fine.
perfect.
I'll second that.
All right, any further discussion? None? Okay, all in favor? 4 in favor, 1 absent. The next one, I don't have a written motion, but the next one, the executive coordinator also provided a list of staff requiring annual appointments. So I would just need a motion to appoint the individuals listed on that memo.
I'm looking.
I didn't get her. It's nice when you write out the motion for us.
I'm just trying to find.
I don't seem to have a list. Am I missing something here?
Hold on one second.
I don't believe I have the list. Why, I have the vacant,
It's further down. It's like, I just found.
Page 116.
Yeah.
okay, just a second. Okay,
So you could.
okay. So I'll make a motion to appoint the Alan Petrillo to the town accountant. We might as well do each one.
I'll second it.
All right, any discussion? All in favor? 4 in favor, 1 absent.
I'll make a motion to appoint Richard Danforth, plumbing gas inspector.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor? 4 in favor, 1 absent.
I'll make a motion to appoint Robert Baldini, alternate plumbing gas inspector.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? No, all in favor? 4 in favor, 1 absent.
I'll make a motion to appoint Thomas Tamburello, junior electrical inspector.
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion? No, all in favor? 4 in favor, 1 absent.
I'll make a motion to appoint Kevin Waddington, alternate electrical inspector.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Yep.
4 in favor, 1 absent.
I'll make a motion to appoint Edward Reed, constable.
I'll second it.
All right, any discussion? All in favor? 4 in, are you,
Yep.
okay, yep, 4 in favor, 1 absent.
And I'll make a motion to appoint Carlos Husak, constable.
I'll second it.
All right, any discussion? No? All in favor?
Yep.
4 in favor, 1 absent.
Okay.
You just wanted to say all those names.
Well, it's nice to know who the people are.
It is,
Right.
it is. Excellent.
Okay.
All right. So
We have-
that concludes the appointments. Approval of the minutes. There's no meeting minutes to approve this evening.
Yeah, we have to do the board of registers one.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you.
Where are we? Electrical. Where am I looking at? What page? I'm looking. I don't have
It's page 114.
114. Probably covered.
Oh, okay. And that was listed in the,
Was it in the?
that's on the memo. So that was.
Yeah, that we already covered.
Where we moved to appoint the
As
executive
presented.
coordinator's memorandum dated June 22nd. That listed all the names.
Yes.
Yes,
No, I didn't.
all
scroll
names
up
are
far
listed.
enough.
It's just supporting
Yeah.
documentation.
Yes.
Since they're new. So if they were new, she put supporting documentation.
Yep.
If they had just expressed that they wanted to be reconsidered, she didn't include.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
So just to be transparent, the memo included the Board of Registrars, Conservation Commission, Cultural Council, Historical Commission, Economic Development Committee, Finance Board, Recreation Committee, Groveland Day Committee, and Zoning Board of Appeals.
Right.
So everyone listed in that memo is officially reappointed or newly appointed,
Okay.
along with Jill Carr, who is not on this list, but that was the part of the motion. All is good. Thank you. All right. Old or unfinished business, we have the committee board template for the Recreation Committee.
They're working on it.
Okay, I'll take it. The other piece for older unfinished business, the fiscal year 2027 goals. So Steve Baker provided a consolidated list of the proposed fiscal year goals. In that list, you'll see 7 are carried forward from 2026. 2 are proposed to replace a couple of the 2026 goals. And then 3 are proposed as new.
Okay.
I know this was a lot of work to put all the ideas together, so I know this will require a little bit of discussion and probably a little bit of editing.
Right. So I was going to say, given the hour tonight, why don't we table it for our next meeting?
That sounds
Why don't we
great.
kick off the next meeting with this up towards the top if we can?
That's perfect. So I think what we can do here then is you can take a little homework on things that you proposed and,
Yep, so I'll make a motion to table it to our next meeting, but
Okay.
give people more time to review and edit.
okay.
Before I second that, 'cause
Yes.
we can't discuss a motion to table, right? So just on the new ones, I took what was sent to me and just tried to put it in the same format, but please understand those are just placeholders. So
Yep.
if you have things that need to be changed or dates or frequencies, that's all fine. I just wanted to make it match, everything match the same format.
Right.
And
Nice.
I'll second the motion to table.
Yep.
Okay, any further, no, there's no discussion on table. Nope, all in favor to table this? 4 in favor, 1 absent. Okay, next up, other items not reasonably anticipated at the time of posting? Nothing? Select board member reports, so this is based on your committee or external representation since our last meeting. I know Jason had the Whittier Tech meeting, but he's not here to discuss, and I don't think there was anything in between. And now town administrator's time.
So just a couple of updates. The library window has been officially replaced. Thank goodness. That was part of the original improvement process where we had the bay window done, but then we had to special order the back window. The back window, if you recall, had been boarded up and there was a AC unit, so the difference is definitely substantial. And that's in part due as well to the HVAC system that the town had put in place over at the library as well. So things are shaping up, and I just wanted to make sure that we highlighted some of the good things that would be happening with some of those improvements. On the bad side of that, you have unfortunate news to report that we are seeing another failure over at the Center Street culvert near Seven Star. So if you'll look in the picture and the top right where the purple box is, so that's the area of the culvert, and you'll see Center Street, and then you'll see Seven Stars, the intersection right there. So before you go into the West Newbury side. Unfortunately, as you see in the photo, that is a void, and there is significant settling underneath the roadway. Unfortunately, again, because of the location, it causes a lot of concern for us because the roadway is a key way for people to access their home along Center Street, so it cuts you off. So you'd have to actually go all the way up Seven Star to Main Street in order to go into West Newbury and get on the other side just to access those homes on that particular area. So there is a long detour that would happen if we had to shut down the roadway. So the highway crew has gone out and they're pretty sure that they can stabilize the area. Again, this is a Band-Aid type situation. We're all very familiar with that. It's similar to the Salem Street Dam, only on a smaller scale. I am working on applying for a community culvert grant, and it's up to $1 million, which we believe would be the cost to fix something of this nature. Unfortunately, if we are successful, that's great, but unfortunately, it would require us to finagle some type of road closure in order to get that work situated. A little further up in the photo, you can't really see, but there's another break in the guardrail. There's another culvert there that is not in great condition. So that would be ideal if we could fix both of them at the same time. But I don't believe we're going to be able to find the financial backing to do both of those. However, again, having them be closed at the same time, going through National Heritage at the same time, going through Concom at the same time, it would just be a lot easier, plus the contractor would already be mobilized. So it is definitely not something that we're completely singling out as not an opportunity, but it's not looking like that. But we are trying to see if there's another way that we can seek funding. So I just wanted to keep you apprised of that and let you know that the highway crew has gone out. They have put some fill in that particular area, and it is stabilized for now, and we are watching it closely.
Why does that happen there? We know with the dam why that happened, but.
It's the same situation. If you'll see in the lower corner, you'll see that there's the corrugated pipe, and you can see that it's eroding and it's kind of dropping from the box culvert. So there's a box culvert, and then at one particular point in time, for some reason, we don't know exactly when, they expanded the road out a little bit. And so you can see that the corrugated pipe, when they put in, is shifting from the box culvert, and the box culvert's starting to fail. So It's unfortunate, but there's also a lot of water traveling to that particular area. If you look again at the right-hand side, you'll see that waterway that comes up by JB Little Road, there's a lot of beaver activity, and it has caused a lot of water flow issues. So it is going to be even more so challenging to get to the pipe because it's heavily underwater. So it's not going to be an easy fix, but that area has had problems just because of the beaver activity and the watershed in general.
Thank you.
I also wanted to let the board know that we recently made two new full-time appointments to the police department in addition to one new part-time appointment. I thought it would be helpful to have an entire roster shared with the board so that you are familiar with what's happening over in that department. So overall, we have 14 full-time positions, including the chief. We have one full-time vacancy, which is the lieutenant's position, and we are in the process of reviewing applications. We have one officer that we just hired that is at the police academy, and we also have one detective assignment vacancy, which is under internal promotion. For right now, that was Detective Sanborn, who just recently left for North Andover, so that assignment is open. The position has been filled, but there's an opportunity for other officers to move up. And then that leaves us with the new appointment of a new part-time officer for 7 part-time officers. So we are just about fully staffed at this particular point in time, except for that one vacancy, which is in the process.
Okay.
Other administrative updates, Salem Street paving update. There was an issue with the pavement installation, unfortunately. Naturally, one of the more controversial roadways of the whole pavement management program. It's something to do with the low asphalt temperatures and the rain. So they are in the process of figuring out exactly what they need to do to move forward, whether or not there's a temporary fix that they, or not a temporary, but a fix or repair that they can do, or whether or not they have to rip out the whole thing and start from scratch. So the highway superintendent is working with EJ Paving, who is our paving contractor, to figure out what we should do next. I did want to jump just real quick. The Affordable Housing Trust website, I don't know if it's going to automatically come up, but I am working on it. I do have what I'm about to show you, which is a very rough draft, but I did want you to see what we're trying to do. How can I move this? So the menu, so you'll have an introduction as to what we have, what plans have been put in place, like we talked about, the buy-down program, the affordable housing implementation plan, et cetera. You know, it will have like what is affordable housing trust, what it means, what the next steps are, what our timeline and what our schedule is, and then it will have like affordable housing trust success stories where you can click on it and you can see the community and what they were able to do. So again, very rough draft, but I wanted to show you that we are working on it. It will have multiple different components where people can actually engage with the data, so there'll be surveys that we can bake into this as well. So hopefully it will be what we were talking about at our last meeting and will be more robust and allow you to have more detailed conversations. And then I also had some unfortunate news, and it was shared with me last minute, which is why it wasn't formatted properly. My apologies, but the Teamster Local 170 bargaining unit that represents the employees of the Merrimack Valley Area Transit, which is MEVA, have sent correspondence regarding a potential disruption in services while they consider ongoing negotiations. So I'm not sure exactly what that impact will be and whether or not there will be an impact, but they had mentioned that it would begin as of July 1. So I will keep the board updated in any information that I receive, but I've received bare minimum other than there may be a possible disruption in services.
So that would mean the bus services may cease?
Correct.
Okay.
For 46 Washington Street, the consultant had presented to the Conservation Commission at their last meeting in regards to the proposed project. I put a photo up there from an aerial perspective so that you can see in relation to the Groveland Well site and the Superfund site, the location. And then the next steps for them is to meet with the Historical Commission to gather some additional input from them and about it being the last historic mill building. And then we will also be continuing the existing conditions assessment, the market analysis, and the feasibility study. And the next phase will include 3 conceptual reuse scenarios for the site, which will be presented to the planning board. Then once that's done and they receive their feedback from the planning board, we will then be making a final presentation to the select board for your review, input, and comment. For 64 Washington Street, we had conducted the additional testing, and again, not something you typically hear, but we were happy to find that the building materials tested positive for the asbestos, lead paint, and PCP containing materials within the building. So we are working to assemble a letter for Mass DEP and EPA to see if we can take advantage of the removal program because of the presence of such materials. To be 100% transparent, the materials were found in the building materials. So we're talking about lead paint painted on the walls, the doors. We're talking about the asbestos coming from the ceiling shingles and
Yep.
things like that. We're not talking about contaminants from the actual operation of the plant. We're talking about the actual building itself.
Right.
The tiles having asbestos in them because of the glue, things like that. But those all tested positive. And the unfortunate part is that due to the unsafe conditions of the building, they were not able to access the older part of the building, which would contain even more so of those materials due to the nature of construction during that time. So there was no way for them to sample that. With the building commissioner and the fire chief, it was very much, you can't go over there, the floor is unstable, that's a wooden one, you can't walk over there, it's concrete over here, it's safe over here. So the testing couldn't be as invasive as we'd like it to be, so that we could get a real, a much more clearer understanding of exactly what we're dealing with in the building. But again, then those next steps is to present that to Mass DEP and EPA and see whether or not we can take advantage of that program so that we can remove the building. Once we remove the building, we can have a much more clearer path as to what the town wants to do moving forward. So at the next meeting, I would like to propose that we add an agenda item where I can present to you and hopefully have the consultant present who did the testing to discuss what they found at the site and provide an overview for you at the July 6th meeting. So upcoming events and administrative approvals, there's 2 meetings, Merrimack Valley Workforce Board quarterly meeting on June 23rd, the Groveland Housing Authority's meeting on June 24th. We approved a field use permit for 2026-02 for the pickleball tennis court at the Pines. That's the parent group that uses it on Friday evenings. For procurement, you'll see a lot of activity on the procurement side with the fiscal year starting to begin and the lead times for ordering equipment materials. We have placed a lot of orders. All of the invoicing and all of the actual receipt of those materials will be in fiscal year 27. But in order to make sure that we're not waiting until next year to get these items, we wanted to be proactive. So you'll see a lot of activity on that front. Projects in progress, we talked about Valley Screw. I did mention that we had a great meeting with the Office of Fish and Boating Access about the Pines Recreation Area, so they're redrafting their agreement that will hopefully be before you at your later July meeting so that we can see whether or not we want to move forward with that. They're also helping to bridge the gap with Haverhill to make a connection over there to increase the Haverhill parking lot that's over by Johnson's Pond, because they talked about doing a fishing pier over there, but in order to do so, they wanted to open up the actual parking availability. And since we don't own that parcel, it made it a little difficult, so hopefully we'll have some good feedback there. As I mentioned earlier, for administration, the town administrator newsletter, I had just finished going through my first draft, so I will be sending that out on July 1st, and then it will come out every 2 months. So it will be for July and August, and then I'll do September, October, November, December, so that I'm making sure that it's not too much information, but enough information and keeping people engaged in the way that we separated it out. It just made sense in terms of the timing of the months. For the human resources and centralizing employee files, it's been on my list for a very long time. I finally just sent out the email to departments requesting them to provide all of the documentation so that we can centralize them in my office. We started cleaning out the filing cabinets, and we're getting ready to figure out exactly how to get those organized and what satellite files that departments would be able to hold in their offices on their site and which ones they would not. So we are going through that. The deadline for everyone should be the last week of July. So hopefully everyone will be able to comply and we can get that up and running, and then we'll be compliant with both town council's strong recommendation as well as our auditors. And the other projects in progress haven't changed. We're still waiting to see whether or not we are going to receive the Mass Works Draft Grant for the Washington Street sidewalks, as well as the Mass Development or Rural Development Grant for 150 Center. But we did talk about the municipal fiber that we were awarded, and we're starting to put those plans together. And then those are a list of the meetings, events, and seminars that I have attended in the last 2 weeks. If anybody has any specific questions about any of those meetings, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions or comments for the town administrator?
I feel like I don't work as hard as our town administrator.
We don't. We don't.
Wow. That's impressive. Thank you for putting it all together in such a concise and
Yes.
easy to understand manner.
Absolutely.
It's helpful.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
So next up, we have select board time and reports. Ed, do you have anything for time?
I do not.
Okay, Steve?
I do not.
Kathy?
Well, just briefly, I did go to the Council on Aging engagement at the Pentucket Middle High School location. Once again, it was very well attended. I always go to the same workshop in the morning because my friend, the Martell Realtor, their daughter is there, and she talks with another individual about planning for your housing needs as you get older and what your options are and what you can do. But then I didn't stay through the afternoon, but the guest speaker I always love to stay for this time was on brain function and in particular like Alzheimer's and or dementia, whichever you want to use it. And he spoke about that, the tendency in our society culture is to say that they are living in a separate realities, but they're not. They may not have the words, they may not remember the names, but they know people, and they're in our reality, and it's very good for them to be engaged and not be closed off in a room, so they can't ever go outside or anything. So it was a really neat, he wrote a book about it. We're still here, I'm still here, I forget which it's called, but very engaging speaker, very intelligent man, and put a whole new spin on it, which to me meant a lot because I lost a close friend who lived in Groveland, fellow teacher from the early Alzheimer's, and it's good to understand this better as you get older too, and if you know older people, to understand it better. So I really, this engagement series thing is fantastic. They do it every year about this time, and it's really good for all ages. You don't have to be over 60 to go. I mean, there's plenty of other younger people there too who are maybe, trying to help a parent or just thinking ahead. It's really, really interesting. So I enjoyed it. And shout out to Alyssa because I love that she puts together such a great program every year.
Yeah. Thanks. Oh, I'm sorry I missed it. I'll catch it next year.
Yep.
Because I did go to the first one. It was really good.
Right,
The only thing I have, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I want to wish everyone a happy and safe Independence Day. It's like right around the corner.
Oh my God.
And hope to see a lot of residents at the Shanahan Field celebration on July 3rd.
Yep.
Because the weather will be fabulous and it will not be rescheduled. For correspondence, we have resident correspondence, Carl Booth regarding trash and recycling carts, so that is included in our packet. And so our next scheduled meeting of the Select Board will be Monday, July 6th at 6:30. Looks like we have concluded our agenda for June 22nd. May I have a motion to close the meeting at 9:23?
Make a motion. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 9:23.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? No? All in favor? 4 in favor, 1 absent. Thank you so much, everybody.